So I died in a hospital bed with several million in the bank, and not one of my 4 daughters looked sad. Relieved. That's the word. 4 grown women standing around a rich old man's deathbed, wearing the exact face you make when a long, unpleasant chore finally wraps. And my last clear thought before the lights went out was the honest one. Fair enough. I earned that face. As a father, I was a 0-star experience. Then somebody shoved my shoulder and told me to quit pretending to be drunk after 2 cups. I sat up at an 8 immortals table in a mud-walled house, surrounded by my childhood crew, Ren Guang, Li Wei, Small Tiger, Fu Bao, all of whom I had personally buried decades ago, all of them currently young, loud, and pouring. This was Ren Guang's house, the one he demolishes 20 years from now to build a villa. My hands under the lamplight. 0 age spots. I pinched my own cheek hard enough to water my eyes. Pain. Real. Fu Bao, what's the date? September 25th, 1978. National Day's coming up. Ming Fei, what's wrong with you? I knocked the bench over, getting out the door. Ran through the village in the dark, ate dirt at the bend in the road, got up bleeding, kept running, screaming one thing inside my skull the whole way. Wife, daughters, I'm back. This save file, you don't suffer. This save file, I carry the load. Because here's the damage report on the man I used to be, and you're getting all of it, ugly as it is. Name's Li Kai, Kaoshan Village, foot of Changbai Mountain. Married Gao Fen 7 years ago. She gave me twin girls the next year, twin girls the year after, and twin girls this past January. 6 daughters, 0 sons, and in a 1978 village, no son made me the punchline of every field and every well. So I rage quit. Quit farming, quit hunting, quit being anyone. Lay on the Kong while my wife worked herself to the bone, drank with the boys on money from grain I stole out of my own family's winter store, and let the village assign me my official title, the Hooligan. And the bill for that playthrough came in bodies. My beautiful wife, dead of overwork in her early 40s. My father, a famous old hunter with a lame leg, still setting traps into old age because his worthless son wouldn't, gored by a giant boar so badly the village couldn't recover all of him. My mother following him within months, hollowed out. And my girls, the ones who survived to grow up, carried the childhood I gave them into lives I'd rather not describe. Lives I sold them into or drove them into. Lives that ended in rivers and in letters that just stopped coming. I got rich afterward. Mountain goods trade, a few million. Boss Li. I'd have traded every yuan to unlive one single year of who I'd been. Instead, I died under my daughter's relieved eyes. Now it's 1978 again. My wife is 20-something and alive behind that door. My father's leg still carries him. My 6 girls are 6, 4, and 8 months. And not one terrible thing has happened yet. Nobody gets this. Statistically, cosmically, morally, nobody gets this. I got this. New game plus. Full knowledge of the patch notes and 1 save slot. Don't mind if I do. The reunion went exactly as beautifully as I deserved. I burst in, reeking of liquor bought with the family's winter grain. Sold it yesterday, this body's yesterday, great timing past me, and found my father Li Wei and my mother sitting at my table with faces like incoming weather systems. I said, "Father, mother," with tears standing in my eyes, 20 years of graveside guilt cracking my voice, and my father grabbed the door bar and tried to beat me with it. My mother stopped him, not out of mercy, because the door bar was too thick. She confiscated it, barred the door so I couldn't escape, and handed him a meter of straight stick she had pre-rubbed with salt. I've barred the door. He can't run. Teach this brat a lesson. Reader, they took turns. And there is a specific folk art to surviving a mixed doubles beating from 2 loving parents. Every village kid knows the meta. Don't stand there proud. Don't say, "Go on then, kill me." That line costs you 2 broken sticks minimum. You cry early, you cry loud, and you hug the soft-hearted one. I'm 50 years old inside. I speed-ran the strat, hugged my mother, sobbed that I'd change, and meant it harder than I've ever meant anything in either life, and she sighed the sigh of a woman who has heard this exact audio file before. Ming Fei, when will you grow up? My father limped out, shouting that the Li family had never produced such a wicked thing. They'd brought grain for my starving family, only a few days' worth, because they knew, correctly, that their son would sell anything larger. My own parents had learned to ration their charity against me, add it to the bill, and then the door closed, and I was alone with my wife. 20 years I'd mourned this woman. I crossed the room and wrapped my arms around her, half a century of sorry jammed in my throat, and Gao Fen stood in my arms like a plank of lumber and said, in a voice with all the warmth of the January river, "Father and mother brought grain. It's in the room. Husband, please don't sell it." That was it. That was the whole homecoming. Please don't sell the grain. She peeled out of my arms and went to settle the babies my shouting parents had woken, and I stood there taking inventory of what I'd earned. A wife who flinches at my footsteps, 6 daughters asleep in a row on the Kang, the 2 littlest thin as kindling because their exhausted mother's milk was failing, and a village that calls me Hooligan and is, here's the worst part, right. I lay down next to a woman who pretended to be asleep rather than talk to me and started planning. Because words were counterfeit currency in this house and I'd printed too many already. Talk changes nothing. Work changes everything. Tomorrow, work. I fell asleep making lists and completely missed the round jade pendant on my chest, heating up like a phone at 1% doing a system update. At 3 in the morning, I sat bolt upright, soaked in sweat, with a stranger's knowledge sitting whole and heavy in my head like someone had installed it while I slept. I crept off the kang, lit the lamp, and held up the little green pendant I'd worn for decades without a single thought. A pretty trinket I'd bought off a fisherman down in Guangdong in my previous life, 20 years from now, on a goods run. It had followed me backward through death and time, and it had brought DLC. Beast Taming Sect, Beast Taming Art, an entire cultivation method printed directly into my brain, and its pitch was simple and insane. Strengthen the body and command beasts. I sat cross-legged on the freezing floor like the manual showed and breathed the way it taught, and the pendant burned hot through my shirt, its deep green draining pale as ordinary stone, dumping whatever it had hoarded straight into me. When I opened my eyes, the roosters were clocking in, and I threw a punch at the empty air and nearly fell over laughing at what I felt. First level. One night. I'd gone to sleep a man worried his liquor-pickled body couldn't climb a mountain anymore. I woke up feeling like I could carry the mountain home in a back basket. And in this era, no tickets, no coupons, no legal buying and selling, a black market that can cost a careless man his head. There is exactly one bank that pays out to a strong back and never asks for papers, and it's standing right behind our village, green and endless. Changbai Mountain, my father's mountain, the mountain that killed him last playthrough. Not this time. This time the mountain and I were renegotiating the whole contract, but redemption doesn't start on a mountain. It starts at a stove. Before dawn, I steamed buns, cooked porridge, kept the fire fed, and my wife, who'd heard me get up and take the grain bag and assumed the obvious, lay in the dark with a tear sliding sideways across her nose, calling herself a fool for ever hoping. Then she heard the stove crackle. She came out on quiet feet and found her husband squatting at the fire with soot on his face. And I looked up and smiled, and whatever she saw made her stand there like she'd been struck. 3 years, I found out later, was the count. 3 years since I'd risen early to cook. When she was fresh from childbirth, I'd made her get up and cook, and scolded her if it was late. Now this sooty man was telling her, "Let the girls sleep. You sleep too. I'll keep breakfast warm. I'm off to the river to see about fish, and look how thin you've gotten." She went back to the inner room like a sleepwalker, carrying the one thought she didn't dare say out loud. They beat him with a salted stick, and it worked? We've been running this stick strategy for years. The river is where I'd start paying the bill. Kaoshan Village. 400 households split by a fast, cold river. My first team on this bank. The second team across the water. 2 sides that feud on principle and intermarry anyway. A state forest farm 10 miles off, and the whole green wall of Changbai at our backs. The river is stuffed with fish and almost nobody catches them. Currents too strong, methods too poor. And technically, every fish belongs to the collective. A trap here and a pheasant there gets ignored. But a man who fishes every day without a hunter's license gets reported by the jealous. What the village didn't have, and I did, was 40 bonus years of knowing things. Specifically, the humble fish cage every kid with a phone will someday watch a tutorial on. The funnel-mouthed basket a fish swims into and cannot logic its way out of. No wire, no rubber rope in 1978? Fine. My father raised me weaving and hunting before I speed-ran my own ruin. 2 hours cutting finger-thick branches, 1 hour weaving, and I had a meter of pure future knowledge, ugly as a first pancake, strong as sin. Dug a dozen fat earthworms out of clean, pre-pesticide riverbank, packed them into a mud ball with 10 ears of corn, stuffed the bait deep, roped the cage to a tree root, and heaved it into the bend where the current slows. Passive income, deployed. Then, while the river did my fishing, I chopped firewood, winter incoming, and for 3 years the firewood in my yard had been cut by my frail wife and my pitying brother while I slept, a fact I'd like officially entered into the record of my shame, and the bundle that should have staggered me went up onto my back like a pillow. The Beast Taming Art wasn't marketing copy. My body was already running on different hardware. I walked home with the wood and collected my reward. My 4-year-olds, Li Qing and Li Lan, playing in the yard, saw their father coming and bolted into the house like they'd seen a wolf. That's what I'd built in them, not respect, reflex. But then Fen came out, saw the firewood, and stared. "You went out early to chop wood?" And when I mentioned fish for dinner, a small head peeked back around her hip. Small Lan, one hand knotted in her mother's trousers, licked her lips and risked everything. "Dad, is there fish for dinner?" I crouched down slow, the way you approach something wild you don't want to startle, and told her Dad would catch a big one just for her. She swallowed and confessed she'd had fish at Grandpa's once and it was so delicious, and that little tongue swipe over her lips broke something in my chest I didn't know was still intact. Lunch that day was cornbread and salt-boiled cabbage, and my 6-year-olds, Li Hua and Li Jing, sat with their hands in their laps, watching me, waiting, because in this house, children who ate before father, or ate too much, got screamed at. 6 years old and already flinch-trained. By me. Add it to the bill. I looked around that table, the wife who didn't trust me, the big girls who feared me, the little ones peeking at me like a storm that might turn, and made the only vow that has ever mattered in either of my lives. If that cage came up empty, I'd walk to the commune and buy a fish with the last of my stolen grain money. Whatever it took. Mei Mei was getting her fish tonight. Non-negotiable. Top of the quest log, pinned. At that lunch, I did something microscopically small that landed like an earthquake. I put cornbread and cabbage into my daughter's bowls with my own hands and told them to eat. In this house, kids who ate before father got scolded. That was the law, and I'd written it, and now the lawmaker was doing table service. Mei Mei, the 4-year-old with the boldest heart in the province, stress-tested the new world immediately. Dad, if I eat less now, can I eat more fish tonight? A child running calorie arbitrage against a dinner that didn't exist yet. I told her tonight was all you can eat, then had to leave the table and go sit on the threshold alone, because a grown man was about to cry in front of his kids and would be claiming sand in his eyes. Word of the Li Kai 2.0 patch spread through the village at the speed of gossip. When I lugged a fat bundle of firewood past the granny bench by the intelligence station, the dozen old women who process all village news, the senior auntie actually stopped mid-sentence to verify her own eyes. The hooligan is carrying firewood. Behind me, the bench detonated into analysis like I'd been spotted walking on water. And out in the yard, my wife brought me a bowl of cold water without being asked. First warmth in her voice in years. And when I told her heavy work is a man's job and she should rest, she stood there buffering, because that sentence belonged to the man she'd married, not the one she'd been surviving. Then she and all 4 girls came out anyway and stacked my chopped wood together, Mei Mei staggering under pieces half her size, announcing, "Dad, I can carry this." And I stood in my dirt yard watching my family work beside me and understood something with total clarity. I was a millionaire boss last life, and this was the richest I had ever been. Not close, not a contest. The cage came up heavy. 4 big fish, carp, black carp, silver carp, 6 to 7 pounds each, plus a handful of crucians, in a village where catching river fish is considered borderline sorcery. I sent the biggest carp to my brother's family. They'd quietly carried mine for years. Debts get paid in this playthrough. Kept the crucians alive for tomorrow's soup. The 5th and 6th girls needed nourishment their exhausted mother's milk couldn't supply, and invited my parents to dinner. My father took one look at the 6-pound carp hanging off my 2 fingers and stood up out of his chair. "You caught that?" Then he examined my woven cage in the yard that evening like a master checking an apprentice's first blade, and let slip the closest thing to praise I'd heard from him in 2 lifetimes. "Compared to your brother, you've actually got talent. That's why the split gave you Fu Bao and the gun." Fu Bao, his prized hunting dog, and the family rifle, both confiscated from me years ago because everyone knew the hooligan would eventually drink them. Correct call, by the way. Past me absolutely would have. And then the old hunter delivered the lecture I'd waited 20 years past his grave to hear. Everyone sees the glamour of a hunter's full pot. Nobody sees that once you walk into those mountains, it's an open question whether you're the hunter or the menu. 9.5 of every 10 old-time hunters died up there. My honest older brother would be prey in the mountains, he said. You had the makings of the real thing. Shame you're a bit lazy. When I swore he'd see the difference, he squinted at me with 40 years of earned suspicion. You're buttering me up to get the dog and gun back so you can sell them. Prejudice is a mountain, and I'd built this one myself, stone by stone. Fine. Rome wasn't built in a day. I'd carry it down the same way, stone by stone. Dinner was the best meal that mud house had ever hosted. 10 pounds of stewed fish, my mother's cooking. My father getting warmly drunk on loose liquor and telling mountain-hauling war stories. And my 4 girls eating fish until their bellies were round little drums, then cracking the big spine bones segment by segment to suck out the marrow. Because in 1978, a 4-year-old already knows no food gets wasted. My father, watching them with soft eyes, said the thing he'd actually come to say. Sons or daughters, they're all your blood. You're the pillar. You can't collapse. I told him the truth. The word heirless was garbage, and I'd carry this family somewhere he could watch it happen. Next day, the river paid again, and then hit the jackpot animation. I wove 2 more cages with flattened mouths, baited them with yesterday's fish guts, and set them in the weedy shallows where the mud runs deep, because that's where turtles live. 3rd cage came up with a boss drop, a soft-shelled turtle 2 handspans across, 7 or 8 pounds, a rare, genuinely valuable animal, the kind the commune pays real money for, alive. It spent the trip home trying to delete my fingers, and spent the night in the wooden tub my daughters had been bathed in as babies, waited under a pot lid and a cutting board because Mei Mei and Ching Ching were already circling it with dangerous scientific curiosity. Dad, are we having fish again tonight? And better. I told them the rest of the catch was going to town tomorrow to become candy, and watched 4 girls' eyes light up and 4 little tongues wet 4 little lips in perfect unison. Even my 2 eldest, the ones I damaged worst, who still couldn't stand near me, edged closer at the word. Children forgive faster than they should. It's the most undeserved mercy in the world, and I intended to spend the rest of my life earning it retroactively. And then the past came looking for me, wearing my cousin's face. On the road home, under a full load of firewood, I ran into Li Wei, my uncle's son, my age, my lifelong enemy, who blinked at the sight of the hooligan actually working and started poking. Changed your ways, Kaiga, get in trouble at the commune. I ignored it and turned to go. So he said the word, quietly, to his friend, calibrated to exactly the volume that reaches me. What's the use of diligence? 6 money-losing daughters, heirless. Nai says sooner or later, eldest uncle's house and property come to our family. And there it was, the entire machine that had deleted my first life, laid out in one sentence. Quick lore dump. After Grandpa died, Nai moved in with her precious youngest son, third uncle, while my father and second uncle dutifully shipped food and money every month. Third uncle's family kept squeezing for more. The brothers fell out, and third uncle's household found their weapon. They toured the village telling everyone Li Kai's daughters meant the Li line was ending, that the heirless man's property would default to them. Every laugh in every field that wore me down, every jeer that converted a hard-working young hunter into the village drunk, that family had seeded half of them. Last life, I swallowed the word heirless and ran from it for 30 years, and it ate me alive. And when I died, my house was the only child they'd ever cared about. Not this save file. I set down the firewood, turned around, said, stop. And when he turned with that lazy smirk, something else, Kaige, I crossed the road in 3 steps and slapped the smirk clean off his face, put him on the ground, and kicked him while he screamed the word again, and then stood over him and published the new terms of service for this valley. I'm your older cousin. Say heirless one more time and I'll kill you. His friend Wang Jianshe lunged in to help and froze mid-lunge when I pointed at him, because somewhere under the wine bloat, the village was suddenly remembering who I used to be, the young tough who hunted Changbai beside Li Wei. Best fists on the team. Family matter of the Li brothers. Interfere and I break your legs. Test me. A wise man knows when to fold. Jianshe dragged my cousin up and they scrambled, Li Wei yelling the eternal coward's sign-off over his shoulder. This isn't over. While I picked my firewood back up like nothing happened and walked home whistling. 10 out of 10, would slap again. It wasn't over, correct. It arrived at my father's yard that same evening wearing a black scowl. Nai. The matriarch who'd never once looked at me without disgust marched in to hold court, took the head seat, sipped the hot water my father hurried to pour, and opened fire. How dare the older brother beat the younger in front of outsiders? You've made the Li family a laughingstock. Her version of events, sweet, diligent Li Wei, who attends literacy class, who wants to learn a trade, politely greeted me on the road, and I attacked him like a rabid animal. Her verdict, served to my father like a tax bill. Hand over 5 yuan, real money, days of a family's food, as damages to poor Li Wei, and going forward, teach your hooligan son to learn from his upstanding little cousin. I watched my honest, guilt-ridden father, a man who'd die in those mountains before asking his own sons for rice, reach slowly, miserably into his pocket, and heard myself shout, "Father, don't bother!" Then I turned to the old woman at the head of the table and ran the audit she'd been dodging for a decade. I'm the hooligan, sure, but at least I have a home, a wife, daughters. Your precious Li Wei is 25 and no girl in 3 villages will take him because he's a lazy bully who milks his family under the cover of literacy class. You want to dote on third uncle's family? Dote away. But you will not run a collections agency in my house. And hear this once. The next member of that family who says the word heirless about me gets their legs broken. I don't care who. Her pointing hand trembled. Her triangular eyes went wide. Nobody in the Li family had ever talked back to her in her entire life. I'd just speed-run the whole taboo. She spun to my father for the traditional backup. Wadza, look at this son you raised. And my father cut his own mother off. Calm, quiet, and completely foreign to everyone in the room. Mother. Mingfei is your grandson too, and we both know Li Wei said it. Second brother and I have never shorted you a coin of your keep. Scold me all you like, but I won't have Li Wei talking about my son. You're old. Enjoy your years. Leave the grandchildren's business alone. I stared at him like the sun had risen in the west. The perpetually dutiful eldest son had finally, at 50-something, picked a side, mine. Nai slammed the table, declared herself an unwanted old woman, and stormed out. And the second the door shut, my mother shot out of the kitchen where she had obviously heard every word, absolutely delighted. Finally acted like a man, Ming Fei. Next time that little rat opens his mouth, beat him again. If his family comes, I'll curse them 3 days straight without so much as a cough drop. Northern mothers do not do neutrality. They do artillery support. And on the strength of that day, I asked for the thing I actually needed, Fu Bao, my father's prized hound, a rare Mongolian scent dog he'd spent 2.5 years training, worth as much as a Type 56 rifle in a hunter's honest bookkeeping, confiscated from me years ago along with the gun, so I couldn't drink them away. He almost said no. Then he looked at 2 days of chopped firewood and caught fish and a son who'd just defended the family name with his fists and waved his hand. Take him, but Ming Fei, sell that dog, and you are not my son, and you never enter my yard again. He meant every syllable. So did I. A dog is a hunter's family, and whatever I'd been, I'd never once sold family. My mother backed me in her own inimitable style. We raised him, we know him, lazy, yes, but he's never done anything truly outrageous, which, as character references go, sits somewhere between a defense and a diagnosis. That night I ran 2 kinds of magic. First, the dog. Fu Bao remembered me, 2 years apart, and he still wagged himself into a circle, then melted under my daughter's 8 small hands. And after dark, when the village slept, I sat cross-legged in the yard, put my palm on his skull, and fed the Beast Taming Art's inner energy through him for half an hour. Man and dog frozen like a woodcut in the moonlight. When I took my hand away, something new looked out of his eyes. Sit. He sat. Stand. He stood like a soldier on parade. The art was real all the way down. An animal that's already accepted, you can be upgraded into a true pet beast, bonded deeper with every session. And one day, the manual promised, he'd sense me, take orders without words. The pendant itself had bricked, drained to plain white stone, its whole battery spent on me, but the method it installed was mine forever, and level 5 held a line item I filed for later, a beast taming seal that subdues even unfamiliar wild beasts. A man with that skill tree, parked on the edge of Changbai Mountain, is not a poor man, he just hasn't collected yet. The second magic was slower and better. That night, for the first time since my return, my wife didn't stiffen at my touch, and by morning, the ice of 7 bad years had finally broken between husband and wife, the 2 of us grinning at each other over the breakfast stove, like newlyweds instead of the parents of 6. She was up before dawn, steaming cornbread for my trip to town. I almost didn't go. Business first. I'd promised this family they'd see the change, not hear about it. Private note filed. This house needs more rooms, soon. Town was 15 miles. The new legs did it in just over an hour. Qingshan Town's black market lived down a double-elbowed alley behind 2 large, silent men. 5 fen at the door if you're selling. A growled, don't cause trouble. And inside, the quietest commerce on the planet. Whispered prices, folded bills, 0 names. The spring wind of reform hadn't officially reached this province, but everyone could smell it, loading. A few years ago, you wore a mask into this alley. And now, men walked out with their chins up. My fish moved at a yuan apiece. The turtle was the main event. I asked 8 yuan, the price of 7 pounds of pork, so the ordinary buyers shook their heads and scrolled past, and waited for the right customer, who spawned in a clean worker's uniform with soft hands and lit up on sight. He haggled. I looked him in the eye and deployed the oldest sales pitch in commerce. Brother, you're not short of oil or meat. You know what this does, especially in that one department. 1 eyebrow. He grinned like a co-conspirator, counted out 8 yuan on the spot, and speed walked home clutching his tonic turtle like a man late for an appointment. 9 yuan in one morning, in an era when 9 yuan was a serious paycheck. And I spent it the way I should have spent every yuan of my first life. Candy for 4 daughters, as contractually promised. White flour, so my family could taste fine grain. A pound of fine salt, the bitter rock salt boulders were done in my kitchen. A pound of cooking oil for the echoing oil jar. A flashlight and matches for the mountains. When I laid it all out on the table, item by item, narrating the roadmap like a quartermaster. Cages in the river, snares up the slope, and when the mountain starts paying, malted milk powder and face cream for you. My wife's eyes went red, and she shoved the baby into my arms and turned away to busy herself with the goods, and issued the most housewife order of surrender ever recorded. Hide the candy well, the 4th one's nose finds everything. I stood in my yard bouncing my 6th daughter, the little one who, in the other timeline, I lose next year to sickness and my own neglect, and who is now going to grow up loud and healthy if I have to fistfight the king of hell, and heard my wife whisper to the empty room the 6 words I crossed death and time to collect. Husband has really changed, that's great. Then, the mountain. My actual bank. Fen dug out my old gear, leg wraps against snakes, hat against the poison mosquitoes, gloves, the freshly honed chin blade, because Changbai is not a hill you stroll into. In the famine years, people starved at its foot eating bark rather than walk in, because everyone who entered cocky came out short a limb or didn't come out. The one non-negotiable insurance is a dog. Fu Bao, mountains! And the old hunter's hound went off like a firework. Then, the second the road ended and true forest began, snapped into work mode. Head high, silent, reading the air. Because a high-nosed scent dog doesn't track the ground, he identifies the prey itself on the wind, which is the difference between following a roe deer and following a roe deer into a boar herd. We found rabbit droppings on a run. An experienced hunter reads a trail like a bus schedule. Small game commutes on fixed routes, and I hung 5 hemp rope snares along it, the spring branch kind that yank a rabbit into the air like a claw machine in reverse. A mile on, 5 leg-hold traps in deep grass for pheasants, baited with a corn trail that thins as it approaches. Greed walks the bird the last meter for you, free labor. Then, while the traps ran their shift, I shopped the mountain's open shelves. Wild wood ear mushrooms off a dead trunk, smaller than farmed and worth 10 of them. A fat cluster of frozen mushrooms, one of the Northeast's 3 great fungi, soup gold, and, 3 meters up a tree, the folk treasure that makes every married man in the province grin. Howling grass, the golden-spotted fern you dry and steep as tea for, let's say, domestic morale. The local testimonial is untranslatable and perfect. He's doing well, and so am I. I climbed for it like the village kid I used to be and packed out 2 meters of inventory. And on the way home, the mountain paid its first meat dividend. From 50 meters out, we heard the flapping. 2 fat hen pheasants in the leg traps, 2-pounders both, wings hammering, held fast. First solo trip in years, snare line deployed, basket full, 2 chickens yelling in the grass, and somewhere above me, I liked to think, the mountain god looking down at the returning prodigal with something like a nod. The snare line had one more drop cued on the way out, a fat 4-pound wild rabbit swinging from a sprung branch like a piñata. I dressed it on the spot and fed the innards to Fu Bao, hunter's law. The dog eats first from every kill, so the dog fights harder for the next one. That's not sentiment, that's compensation policy, and my old partner buried his face in his wages, humming with happiness, tasting blood for the first time in 2 soft years. In my last life, this dog died of old age in a yard, and I've always believed he died bored. Not this run either, buddy. Home was a scene I want carved on my grave instead of anything about money. I laid the rabbit and 2 pheasants on the ground like raid loot. My wife's eyes narrowed into crescent moons. Husband is amazing. The girls stroking the rabbit fur in awe, and Mei drooling frankly at the corner of her mouth, asking if they could eat it. I wiped her chin and told her better than that. The meat was dinner, and the fur was becoming winter gloves, so she and her sisters wouldn't get the chilblains that cracked and bled and itched them every winter of my last life while their father slept off his liquor. Mei lit up like New Year. With gloves, I won't get chilblains anymore, thank you, Dad, and then stretched up and pressed a small kiss to her father's cheek. And I stood there stunned stupid, touching my face like she'd struck me. 10 full seconds of buffering. 4 years old, and she'd already forgiven more than I'd earned in 25. That night's dinner did the deeper repair work. Pheasant soup with frozen mushrooms and wild ginger, swallow your tongue grade broth. Braised rabbit in soybean paste with flatbread stuck to the pot soaking up the sauce. But when I poured myself 2 ounces of liquor, the table went silent, and 4 small bodies stiffened on instinct, because in their memories, father drinking meant father shouting money losers and get lost. I saw it, put the cup down, fished the 2 chicken wings out of the soup, and laid them in my eldest girl's bowls, found the 2 rabbit legs, and laid them in the little ones, and said, eat slowly, the wing meat's tender. 4 quiet thank you dads, the older 2 still formal, the little 2 sing-song, and the fear dissolved back into chewing, and the last of my liquor went down like a signed oath. Fen crumbled bread into chicken broth and carried it in to spoon-feed the 2 babies. My 5th daughter, the one the old timeline took, was getting chicken soup at 8 months old. Timeline, officially derailed. Good, I derailed it on purpose. My father, when I dropped a pheasant off, performed the complete repertoire of northern father affection, scolded my mother for fussing over me going into the mountains. You went in with me plenty, woman, go pluck the chicken. Ordered 20 caddies of cornmeal sent to my house over my objections with the immortal accounting. The chicken is your filial gift, the cornmeal is for my granddaughters, that's decided. And then, as I left, called after me with his eyes glued to his porridge. Don't go in without a weapon on you. And through the door behind me, I caught the low exchange that put a fist around my heart. My mother. Husband, give him the gun. It was his in the split. My father. What's the rush? Who knows if this is real yet? The gun was coming. I just had to keep being real. Easiest grind of my life. The river, meanwhile, produced the sequel to my cousin problem. You cannot carry turtles through a village of 400 households and keep a secret. Within 2 days, my cage spots had an audience. Li Wei and his pack standing over my gear, with my honest older brother Li Hao already planted there like a fence post, glaring, guarding my cages entirely on his own initiative, because that's who my brother has been since factory settings. Li Wei ran his mouth on cue. The river's collective property. Anyone can fish it. Maybe the team leader should hear about private cages. The classic move of a man who can't build a thing but has a black belt in reporting one. My brother, whose fists are fluent but whose mouth is not, was already clenching up. So I stepped past him and put it flat. The river belongs to everyone. Copy my cage design freely. Open source. Enjoy. But touch a cage of mine again and nobody carries you home. Their big lad Guo Chuan squared up. And if I don't? And I looked up at him with the smile I'd learned in a much worse lifetime and said, then I'll just beat you. Beside me, Li Hao stepped shoulder to shoulder without a word. Below us, Fu Bao dropped into a crouch and aimed a growl at Chuan's throat like a drawn arrow. And their sensible one, Guo Min, the accountant's son, smoothly patched the situation. We're one team. We grew up together. We'll weave our own. And imagine how the second team would laugh. Which handed me the opening to install the actual fix. I proposed the river be divided into personal cage territories, 1 stretch per man, no disputes. Adopted on the spot. My first act of village legislation, ratified by a growl. Then I gave my river away. The whole cage operation, proven spots, the trick of it, the works, handed to my brother. He fought me on it. You've got 6 kids. I've only got 3. That's my brother's entire soul in 1 sentence. So I gave him the truth. The river freezes soon. My business is the mountain, and this family runs on 2 brothers now. He'd carried my wife and daughters through 20 years of my uselessness in the other timeline. A river was a down payment. He patted my shoulder with suspiciously bright eyes, and behind our backs, naturally, Li Wei stood in his yard, weaving his copied cages and preaching to his pack. Let the heirless fool haul treasure out of the mountains, Nine says. When he dies without a son, everything he owns comes to me. His crew toadied along, all except Guo Min, quietly noting that the man crowing heirless at others was 25 and couldn't get a single girl in 3 villages to look at him. Even his own gang was starting to run the numbers. I heard none of it, and it wouldn't have cost me a step. Because that day, the mountain dealt me my first serious drop. On a flat beyond the hill, Fu Bao went rigid at a burrow mouth, digging and barking, and 1 sniff told me what my father spent a lifetime teaching me to recognize. Badger. In 1978, a badger isn't an animal, it's a warehouse with legs. The pelt makes the warmest jacket a village has ever seen, the medium done right beats wild boar, and the oil is genuine medicine, the folk miracle for burns, scalds, and frostbite that clinics can't match. Catching one is engineering work. A badger digs a fortress, 3 entrances minimum, tunnels like a subway map. So I put Fu Bao on survey duty, find every hole, slowly, miss nothing. And my beast-tamed dog located both spare exits like he'd downloaded the blueprints. I stamped them shut. Then the old smoke game, fire of dry branches at the main entrance, smothered with moss and soil into thick white smoke, fanned into the tunnels with my own jacket, and fanned correctly, because this is an art with a body count. Too gentle and the badger sits tight, too hard and you choke it dead underground and have to dig it out by hand, which is where the village phrase, picking the badger, comes from. Always deployed about clueless young men. I fanned in slow 3s, 10 patient minutes, 20. Mountain work is stability plus patience, until Fu Bao's ears snapped up 3 seconds before my human ones heard a thing. I dropped the jacket, grabbed the empty back basket, jammed its mouth over the hole, and a black and white missile shot out of the earth straight into it. 1 clean punch to the head, and the badger went to sleep mid-flight. Express checkout. Then the hole kept paying. Badgers are family animals. A den runs 4, 5, on a lucky year 7, and every 10 seconds another one rocketed out of the smoke into my basket and met what I privately named the Immortal's heaven-sealing fist. For the record, no ordinary man knocks out a badger barehanded, too fast, and those front claws open a forearm like an envelope. You need reaction, speed, and power simultaneously, or you don't try. The Beast Taming Art had quietly patched me into ore territory. When the earth finally went silent, I stood over 6 badgers laid out on the grass, 20 to 30 pounds each, 150 pounds of animal, and ran the arithmetic that made my hands shake. Skin, meat, and oil together, this pile was worth roughly a village family's entire year. 1 morning, 1 dog, 1 smoke fire, which I then extinguished ember by buried ember, because 1 spark in a dry autumn is how an entire mountain range gets deleted. Hauling it home was its own comedy. No gun meant no lingering to butcher. 150 pounds of blood smell deep in the forest is a dinner bell for things I was not yet spec'd to argue with. Current fighting class, king of soldiers, not king of bears. So I cut a shoulder pole, hung 3 badgers aside plus the rabbits, squatted under. Nearly 200 pounds, and stood up steady, a load that would have folded even my best younger self, and marched out of the mountains, pausing occasionally to repunch a badger that dared to respawn mid-journey. And then I had to pass the intelligence transfer station, the granny bench at the village mouth, the fastest information network north of the capital. And this time, there was no stealth option, because you cannot smuggle 6 badgers past a dozen bored aunties. The bench erupted. Hands reached out to squeeze the pelts without asking. Verdicts flew. Ming Fei's got skills. The prodigals straightened out. A man can't stay useless forever. And 4th aunt-in-law, mother of my sworn brother Li Wei, and one of the only women who'd never once mocked me, staked her godmother claim on the spot. That part was warm. The other part arrived wearing my Qing Ai's face, Li Bo's mother, the loudest broadcaster of the word "HEIRLESS" on this bench for years, who marched up, announced, "Give me one. Your grandma hasn't had meat in a month," and started untying my rope. The entire bench curled its lip in unison. This was the household that collects Nai's keep money from my father every month, now invoicing the grandson they'd helped ruin. I slapped her hand off the rope, hard, and itemized it for the audience. Nai's care is your household's job, paid monthly by my father and second uncle. Each of these is 10 yuan at the co-op, and you want one free? For filial piety? Shameless. She shrieked the classics. How dare you strike an elder? You've gotten cocky over a few badgers. And while I shouldered the pole to leave, she ran the sequel play, quietly slid my gutted rabbit off the back of the pole, and speed walked away with it hugged to her chest. Broad daylight, 12 witnesses, incredible confidence. It took 4th aunt-in-law's shout to flag it, and then it took exactly 2 words from me. Fu Bao. Stop her. A yellow arrow overtook her in 6 strides and parked in front of her with red eyes and a rolling growl, and the boldest thief on the bench froze mid-step like a paused video. I walked up, repossessed my rabbit out of her arms, and offered the only mercy on the menu. If you weren't my aunt, if I didn't mind the village laughing at the Li name, you'd be picking yourself up off this road right now. She scurried off crimson, already drafting the outraged incident report for her husband, and behind me the bench, sensing the real opportunity of the day, pivoted seamlessly from drama to commerce. Ming Fei, will you trade badger meat? Grain, cloth, coupons, cash, I announced. Come by after lunch. The intelligence transfer station emptied in 90 seconds flat as every auntie sprinted home to raid her pantry. Fastest market-making event in village history. Home was the payoff I'd hauled 200 pounds for. My wife stammering, You caught. With her mouth open wide enough for an egg, 4 daughters' mouths open wide enough for quail eggs, Mei reaching for a badger and getting scooped up mid-grab, don't touch, they wake up mean, and my quiet 3rd girl Ching issuing her solemn ruling, they're naughty, we'll eat them later. Justice in this house is swift and edible. My father came fast, limping quicker than my mother could walk, which for Li Wei is a sprint, took one look at 6 badgers, and interrogated the impossible part like the veteran gunner he is. Smoke drives them out in a swarm. One man can't take 6 without a miss. When I raised my sandbag of a fist and said, 1 punch each, he stared at my unscratched hands with 40 years of professional disbelief, then visibly decided not to look a miracle in the mouth, because whatever his son had become, 6 badgers meant his granddaughter's winter was solved, and said, for the 2nd time in 3 days, the sentence I'd have paid millions for in my last life. Your old man was right. You've got talent. Then the whole clan converged for the feast, my brother hauling fish, sister-in-law diving into the kitchen, my mother arriving with vermicelli and potatoes and taking over the badger oil rendering personally, because the oil is the treasure and rendering it is an art. Fascia out, blood clots out, heat exact, scorch it, and the price dies. Teaching my wife the craft as she went, which was its own quiet miracle. My mother had cold-shouldered Fen for years, blaming the daughters for her son's ruin, and now, watching her son come back online, she was warming to her daughter-in-law in real time. One rebirth cascading through the whole family tree. I split the haul the way a man should. Innards to Fu Bao, minus liver and gallbladder, which my father intercepted mid-toss. Pharmacies pay for those. Don't spoil the dog. 5 pounds walked across the river to my elder sister, the one who'd secretly slipped food to my family for years under her father-in-law's suspicious eye, who in my last life lent a worthless drunk 100,000 yuan on nothing but blood. My brother carrying it at a trot so he'd make it back for dinner. Dozens of pounds traded through the afternoon to the aunties for cornmeal, vermicelli, potatoes, and 1 precious bolt of cloth, until my table looked like a branch office of the co-op, and the family's winter arithmetic flipped from survive to comfortable. And at that dinner, 12 people around one table, stewed badger with glass noodles and potatoes, flatbread stuck to the pot, 3 generations of Li men with wine cups. I read the room and asked my father for the last unlock. The gun. Winter incoming. Snow season is prime hunting. My 2 eldest needed school fees in spring, tuition, notebooks, pens. He drank, went quiet, read out the charge sheet one final time. The gun was yours from the split, but without me, your mother, your brother, your sister, your wife and daughters might have starved. Watched me take it standing and ruled. These past days you've looked like a head of household. Your mother brings the gun tonight. You've got 20 bullets left. You haven't fired in 4 years. Practice outside the mountains first." And then my quiet brother did the bravest thing I'd ever watched him do. Put down his cup and told our father he wanted into the mountains too. The old man's refusal was instant and then crumbled, panel by panel, against the two of us. My case, the river freezes. 2 brothers watch each other's backs. Winter idle is winter poor. And my brother's case, which came out of him in more words than he usually budgets for a week. The village school reopened. My Lin goes next year. Our generation lived and died at the foot of this mountain, and I want my kids to read, to write, to see something, until Li Wei, who could stop his son's but not his grandchildren's future, surrendered on terms. Mao Chu, the family's second dog, goes to my brother, plus the heavy recurve bow, and peak Li Wei, since the original family split had favored my brother in grain and housing to balance my dog and gun. My brother now owed me compensation for the new dog, because I may be nothing special, but I have treated you 2 brothers exactly equally. I tried to wave it off and got glared at. Fair is fair, itemized, forever. That's my father. That's the man whose bones I left on this mountain once, and whose account book I intend to fill with nothing but green numbers this run. We were mid-toast when Fu Bao's bark announced visitors, and I stepped out to find the full raid party at my gate. Nai, third uncle, and Li Bo, 3 storm cloud faces come to collect damages for the ant whose hand I'd slapped off my rope. Timed for the meat, too, Nai plopped into the seat of honor, eyed the half-eaten badger stew, swallowed audibly, and opened with the classic, "When the eldest son eats meat, can't his mother have a bite?" A sentence engineered to make my duty-bound father stammer apologies, which it did, on schedule. Then she got down to business. I had insulted Qing Ai and set the dog on her. I was out of control, and if my father couldn't discipline me, she'd convene the clan elders to do it. Third uncle barked at me to respect my elders. I told him I was speaking to Nai, and he could mute himself. Li Bo puffed up to defend his daddy, and then, cornered and stupid, let the word slip out one more time, in front of everyone. "You heirless bastard." He regretted it while still airborne. My kick took him off his feet and deposited him 2 meters back into the yard, where he sat down like a goose landing on sand and refunded his lunch. Third uncle swung at me, and my father's voice cracked across the yard. "Ming Fei, you're not allowed to hit your third uncle." I lowered my fist. Obedient son that I am. "Go deal with Li Bo. Your third uncle is mine." And then I witnessed the single greatest thing I have seen in 2 lifetimes. My 50-something father, lame leg and all, hopped across the yard in 2 crutch-quick strides and slapped his little brother off his feet, because Li Wei, before he was anyone's grandfather, was the gunner who took black bears and boars out of Changbai Mountain, and a limp does not live in a man's hands. He pinned third uncle to the dirt and administered discipline like the eldest brother of the clan he'd never stopped being. My mother, meanwhile, intercepted Nai's charge with a bear hug of filial devotion. "Mother, don't struggle. Fists have no eyes. Your daughter-in-law will protect you," which remains the politest headlock ever administered in that province. My brother stood guard over father with his fists balled, and I sat on Li Bo's chest handing out receipts, 1 slap per syllable. Heirless. Heirless. You're 25 and can't find a wife, and you call me heirless? Until my father called time on the technical grounds that a face that swollen would embarrass the clan. I leaned down and left one whisper in my cousin's ear. "Say the word once more and you'll never get out of bed again." This time the fear in his eyes was the real, permanent kind. "Achievement unlocked, cousin. Object permanence." Then my father stood up over his brother and delivered the verdict 20 years overdue. "Kustenlos gone, but your eldest brother is still here. Your household takes mother's keep money from me and Jinga every month, and it's never enough. And what you've done these 2 years is disgusting. Today I taught you a lesson. Take it, or keep it to yourself, either way." And to his mother, quietly, and my grandmother, who knows her eldest son, knows the quiet voice is the dangerous one. "Mother, meddle in my sons again, and I'll ask the team leader to rule you rotate 4 months in each of your 3 sons' houses, or take the standard village pension." Translation: the pipeline feeding third uncle's family off my father's back gets severed by law. She fled without her badger meat. All 3 left carrying nothing but bruises and arithmetic. And the village intelligence transfer station, within a day, was gleefully cross-referencing the sudden facial swelling in third uncle's household with dinner theater delight. That night, my mother crossed the yard, carrying what looked like a cloth-wrapped stick, and my hands shook taking it. The Type 56 semi-automatic, kept oiled and spotless by my father for 4 years, like the family shrine it basically was, plus 28 counted bullets in a paper twist, and 1 final warning delivered in her voice, but authored by him. "This gun is a mountain hunter's life. Sell it, and you have no father." Then the tender ambush every northern mother keeps chambered. "The gun is for safety, small game and badgers only. No deep mountains. Don't you dare go hunting big beasts for money. You have 6 children," punctuated with a slap to my back that rang like a starting bell. I promised. I lied, politely. The deep mountains and I had unfinished business. I sat at my table that night with the rifle across my knees, smelling gun oil, feeling 4 years of fear uninstall themselves. A hunter with a dog is safe. A hunter with a dog and a gun is a paycheck with legs. The Badger oil run to the county seat turned the corner from surviving to building. 28 gin of my mother's flawless rendering, sealed in a ceramic jar, a rattling hour-long bus that smelled indescribable, and at the state pharmacy by the county hospital, a stone-faced appraiser who smeared a fingertip on the back of his hand, pronounced it bright, clean, faintly fragrant, top grade, pay him first-class price, and walked off without a second glance, which is the highest compliment a professional gives. 110 yuan, months of a city worker's salary, out of one Badger hole. The young saleswoman, Wu Xiaoyun, counted it out and got so unprofessionally friendly about the handsome mountain man that her colleague teased her pink the second I left, a compliment I walked past completely oblivious, being a married man on a schedule with a department store to raid. And raid it I did, like a man clearing a quest log 20 years overdue. Malted milk extract, the legendary tonic I'd been too poor and then too selfish to ever buy. You and the girls drink this. Look how thin you've gotten. Clamshell face cream for my wife's wind-cracked hands. A little mirror and a hair clip for her. 4 bright red hair ties, 1 per daughter, festive as New Year. White rabbit milk candy, 2 bottles of soy sauce, 50 rifle rounds from the co-op, 10 caddies of liquor on the way home, half decanted straight into my father's wine jar because filial piety is best served at 80 proof. The homecoming was the payout for everything. I unpacked the basket item by item like a magician while 4 girls orbited the table, then unwrapped a white rabbit candy and, coaxing my wife exactly the way you coax a 4-year-old, told her to open her mouth and tell me if it was sweet. She flushed scarlet in front of the kids, opened her mouth and nodded with wet eyes. Very sweet. 1 candy per girl, 1 red ribbon each, and then my second daughter, the careful one, the last holdout, looked up at me and said 4 words she hadn't said unprompted in living memory. Dad is so good. The eldest gathered her sisters. We've had our candy, let's go clean the yard, and marched them out like a tiny site foreman, and I stood in my mud house rich past counting. Millions in my last life. Never once this rich. 1 more soul joined the payroll that week. Mao Cho, my father's second dog, transferred to my brother for the winter mountain plan, along with the heavy recurve bow. I found her dozing in guard dog retirement and scratched her ears with a pang. In the old timeline, this good hound also died bored at a gatepost. Between Fu Bao's new Beast Tamed firmware, Mao Cho coming out of retirement, a rifle with 78 rounds, a brother with a bow, and a mountain full of winter, the Li brothers hunting company was fully staffed. All we needed now was snow. My parents' send-off that night deserves the record too. After I left, my mother informed my father that his son was now better at the mountains than he was. Second solo trip, 100+ yuan, hides not even sold yet, and my father, the most famous gunner in 3 communes, drained his cup and delivered the eternal husband's surrender. I'm too lazy to argue with a long-haired, short-brained woman like you. He taught me everything I know. She knows it. He knows she knows. That's marriage, folks. Recruiting Mao Cho was pure farce. I walked into my father's yard at dawn. She registered friendly human, rolled over for a belly rub, and went back to sleep. I carried her out like luggage. She jumped down at the gate and tried to walk home. In the end, I outsourced the HR. Negotiation. Fu Bao, she's yours now. Explain it. My dog planted himself in her path and barked a paragraph. She barked a rebuttal. Some canine accord got ratified, and suddenly she spun and bolted for the mountain road ahead of us. 6 years of gatepost boredom detonating at once, the 2 dogs play brawling all the way to the tree line. Watching that old girl come back online was better than any haul. In the forest, their 2 schools showed instantly. Fu Bao high-nosed, fast, quartering wide, Mao Chio low-nosed, methodical, arrow straight, a scout and a tracker, a matched set, the full sensor suite. I sat her on a stump, laid my palm on her skull, and half an hour of beast taming true chi later, I had pet beast number 2, and she came out of it sharper-eyed than Fu Bao had. Because talent is one thing, but 6 extra years of mountain miles is its own skill tree. That day's trip was a highlight reel of everything I love about this job. En route, planning for winter, I scouted a Tangzi house site, the overnight shelter every deep mountain crew needs, and placement is a science, near water but not at water, because animals commute to water, and you do not want to respawn at the crossroads of a badger convention or a spring bear's breakfast route. Along the way, the mountain's shelves kept restocking straight into my basket, more howling grass, frozen mushrooms, wood ears, 2 fat lion's mane. Then came the crime of the day. A red squirrel chirred at us from a branch, and I remembered the oldest exploit in the northern woods. Squirrels are hoarders with anxiety. I found its camouflaged pantry hole 10 meters from its den, and the camouflage was frankly insulting. Reached in and started scooping out the harvest of its little lifetime. Acorns, hazelnuts, pine nuts, walnuts, 7 or 8 pounds of premium snacks for my daughters, and drinking nuts for my father. The owner burst out of its den and stood on the branch swearing at me, genuinely swearing. The profanity content of that chatter was unmistakable. While I left it a courteous 2 or 3 pounds, the squirrel robbed to zero will genuinely despair, sometimes fatally, and I refuse to lose such an excellent unpaid employee. Tipped my hat and told it, "Thanks, keep up the good work. I believe in you." The cursing followed us for 50 meters. Best business partner I've ever had. Half an hour later, Fu Bao's upgraded nose found badger den number 2, 4 exits this time, a nervous family, and the assembly line ran like I'd been doing it for decades. Block, smoke, fan impatient threes, urea sac over the last hole, and 5 more badgers met the heaven-sealing fist mid-leap. And while I bled them out, rifle loaded and within reach, because 100 pounds of blood smell is a dinner bell, and this time I wanted the argument. The jade pendant on my chest went furnace hot, the dead white stone that had spent itself making me. On a hunch, I set it in the blood pit, and the blood drained pale in front of my eyes, 10 seconds from red to bone white, and the pendant came up tinged faintly blue-green again. The pendant drinks blood, which meant the spent cheat code wasn't spent at all. It was hungry, and every kill from here on was potentially feeding it back toward whatever it had been when it carried an entire cultivation sex inheritance. I hung the spare innards on a branch for the mountain god, loaded 5 badgers and a full basket onto the shoulder pole, and walked out doing the best math of my life. If a dead pendant taught me level 1, what does a fed one teach? The village economy, meanwhile, had reorganized itself around my yard. The granny bench now greeted me like a returning cargo ship. One auntie even tried the direct approach. "Twice in a row, Ming Fei, what's the trick?" To the speechless horror of the entire bench. Asking a hunter his spots is asking a man for his bank pin, and I gave her the answer that is technically true and perfectly useless. Patience, lush mountains, search inch by inch. Then the meat for Gon's exchange ran all evening. Potatoes, cabbage, vermicelli, cornmeal, cloth. One auntie's trust rewarded with an extra cut because she'd said, "I watched you grow up, you won't cheat me," and happened to be right. My parents drafted as shop clerks until the table looked like a co-op branch, and my mother, stacking it, delivered the quarterly report. "Your family of 8 is set for the winter." Meanwhile, my honest brother reported the inevitable. The whole team was weaving copied fish cages now, the river carpeted in them, and I just shrugged because I'd known from day one the cage was a low-wall trick with a 2-day patent, which is exactly why I'd open-sourced it and bet the family on the mountain, where the wall is your life and nobody follows you over it. I did predict, accurately as it turned out, that the cage boom ends in a first team versus second team river war by freeze-up, villages gonna village. And then, at dinner, my wife did something braver than anything I did that week. She put down her chopsticks, visibly gathered herself, and asked, carefully, in the voice of a woman bracing for the old Li Kai, whether, if the badger meat couldn't all be sold, she might take 1 pound to her little sister. Because here's the debt under that timid question. Fen and her sister Xiaowan fled famine and chaos in Sichuan as 2 starving girls, got dumped by the relative who'd lured them north, and sat crying outside the forest farm gate with nowhere on earth to go, until my sworn brother Li Wei found them, tried to marry Fen himself, got vetoed by his own parents in a legendary mixed doubles beating, and then, because that's the kind of brother you get issued once per lifetime, marched straight to my house and gave me his miracle. Ming Fei, want a wife? Love at first sight, both directions. Fen married me and raised her little sister in my house, and in the years of my rot, I repaid all of it by drunkenly cursing Xiaowan as a freeloader until she fled into a bad marriage across the river. In the other timeline, that road ended in ruin for her and her boy, and when my wife begged me to take her widowed sister in, I refused and scolded her for asking. She never really spoke to me again. 20 years of silence, purchased with 1 refusal. Worst trade in my career, and I've made some bad ones. So this time, when she asked for 1 timid pound, I said, take 2 generous cuts. She's your sister. Don't let the second team call us cheap. And go look her in the eye and find out if that household is mistreating her. Because you 2 came here with no one, which means we are her family, and if anyone's bullying Xiao Juan, we show up. My wife stared at me like the sun had switched directions, and I watched the last of the old ice go out of her. The husband who did the heavy work and treated her like treasure, the one from the original box art, was home. The evening's last customer required a different tone entirely. Fu Bao barked. I stepped out, and there, hand already extended toward the final piece of badger meat on my board, stood Wang the Greedy, the village's one professional parasite, the man who outlazied even my worst years, who steals anything unattended and, when caught, lies down on the ground and dares you to kill him. My roar froze his hand midair. He turned around with his signature oily grin already loaded. Ming Fei, look, it's your last scrap. You can't even sell it. Why not give it to your second uncle here? Let him taste a little meat. Second uncle. My surname is Li. His is Wang. The family tree connecting us exists exclusively in his appetite. And here's the cold arithmetic under my anger. The meat itself was nothing. 1 pound of badger to a family suddenly drowning in it. But charity to Wang the greedy isn't charity. It's advertising. Feed him once, and by tomorrow. The whole team knows Li Kai's yard runs a free meat giveaway for anyone shameless enough to whine at it, and every future haul comes home with a tale of beggars. Never underestimate the appetite of a village. So I offered him the same terms as everyone. Trade something, anything. He performed his poverty aria. All I own is my kang. Put it on credit, and then, mid-sentence, simply grabbed for the meat. My slap arrived before his fingers did, and spun him a full 360, and the mask dropped instantly. Everything on this mountain is collective property. You're fleecing socialism. I'll report you to the commune. The parasite's national anthem, performed by a man who hadn't weeded his own plot in 2 years. I didn't debate. Word 1, Fu Bao. Word 2, bite him. And Wang the greedy, who knows exactly what my dogs do to badgers, set a village sprint record while howling threats over his shoulder. My father watched him go and filed the veteran's warning I'd remember later. A toad on your foot won't bite you, but it's filthy. Watch that one. The toad hops directly to the team leader's house, my Uncle Wen, as luck had it, a fair man who'd spent that very evening puzzling over the era's schizophrenic policy patch notes. Block the capitalist road, but don't discourage commune members selling local produce. Reform crawling in sideways, confusing every honest official in the country. Wang burst in howling that Li Kai was hunting without permission, selling meat from his home, walking the capitalist road, demanded the militia arrest me, and got the pipe cracked across his skull mid-sentence. If I muster the militia, I'm arresting you first, you chicken thief. Should we schedule another public criticism session about your work points? But the report still did its work, because that's what reports do in this era. And so, late that night, Uncle Wen came to my yard himself, quietly, with a flashlight, and over a mug of hot water, handed me the most valuable item drop of 1978. The line, "Your father holds a hunter's license. The mountains are covered." But hear me, exchange, don't sell, barter with commune members all you like. The moment money changes hands inside this village, the nature of the thing changes, and not even I can cover you. What you do in the county town is your business, and on his way out, the benediction. Next time Wang the greedy comes scrounging, beat him. As long as he can still walk, I'll handle the rest. In an era where one anonymous report could delete a family, I'd just been handed the rulebook by the referee himself. I intended to follow it to the letter, barter in the village, cash in the county, and I filed Wang the greedy under unfinished business right next to my father's musing that maybe a few Li brothers should pay the man an educational visit before New Year. The days after were the good kind of unglamorous. We tore apart my Kong, the heated brick bed I hadn't maintained in years, my father, brother, and I shoveling out an archaeological dig of my laziness. The flue so caked in black creosote it was one winter from smoking my family in their sleep. 40 basket loads of ash hauled to the plot as fertilizer, bricks scraped and relaid, fresh yellow earth on top. My father teased. I took it, and when I served him sugar water during the break like a dutiful son, he drank half and passed the rest to my brother without a word, because that's how love moves in this family, sideways, in an enamel mug. That night, both households crowded my brother's table for badger meat dumplings, a once-a-year luxury rendered ordinary, plus stewed fish and tofu, whose smell reportedly reduced children 3 houses down to tears. And my mother, watching her 2 sons' families eat from one pot, said the thing the whole week had been compiling toward. A family united like this, life only gets better from here. But the sweetest thread that week was the one I'd been dreading. Fen went across the river to see her little sister, and came home with wrong eyes and a brave face, and only told me the truth that night once the girls were asleep. Xiaojuan's mother-in-law beats her, works her like a mule, feeds her last, struck her in front of my wife, the whole household treating her exactly how you treat a girl from far away with nobody at her back. My wife cried into my chest, "Isn't it because we're outsiders?" Because she has no one? And I held her, and set the policy of the rest of my life. She has us. We are her family. Anything good out of the mountains, Xiaojuan eats at our table. If that household won't treat her like a person, she comes home to us, or we go to their door. My wife went still in my arms, and I could feel her measuring the words against the man who, in another life, refused this exact mercy and lost her heart for 20 years. This time the words were load-bearing. This time I'd back them with everything I pulled off that mountain. And the mountain, right on cue, raised the difficulty. At dawn, I went in to run my trap line and found the pheasant patch silent. 2 traps had caught birds. The birds were gone. Blood, feathers, drag marks, and the trap stakes nearly ripped out of the earth. Force no fox and no thieving hunter uses. I dropped into a crouch with the rifle already up, and the forest got very small and very loud. Something big had come down from the deep mountains to the outer slopes, something strong enough to tear a staked trap half out of the ground, bold enough to rob a hunter's line, with a full day's head start. Fu Bao took the cold trail, while Mao Chu fell in behind me, guarding my six the way a second dog is born to, and we tracked 5 careful miles through a forest gone weirdly empty of rabbits and birds. The small game silence that means a predator has moved into the zone, until even Fu Bao's upgraded nose ran out of yesterday. The trail was dead. The question wasn't. Something new was hunting on my mountain, and until I knew what, every trip in was a coin flip I'd be taking with a rifle in both hands. The rest of that day turned into the mountain's variety show. First act, the bee. A wild honeybee buzzed my water break, and every hunter knows the equation. Bees mean honey, and wild bees rarely range more than 5 or 6 li from home, so I got up and followed it. The bee, apparently detecting a 2-legged burglar on its tail, led me on a 15-mile idiot's tour of the slopes, stopping, starting, doubling back, until near noon it finally went home, to a hive wedged in a rock crevice 4 meters up a sheer, unclimbable stone face. I stood under it like the fox under the grapes, formally declared a blood feud, and marked the spot. Next trip, proper gear, and that honey joins the Li family pantry. The mountain had heard me laughing at squirrels yesterday and dispatched a bee to even the score. Respect the balancing patch. Then it sent an apology. Mid-lunch, Fu Bao went rigid and growled at the tree line. I killed Mao Chu's bark with a hand signal, grabbed the rifle, dropped into a crouch, and out of the woods came bouncing 2 roe deer, the blessed fools of the forest, straight toward a man with a gun. My first shot in 4 years pulled a hand width off, neck instead of head. The deer bolted 100 meters before the dogs closed the ticket, and I was still grumbling about skill decay when I looked up and found the second deer standing 10 meters away, staring at me, having run off and then come back to see what the noise was. The look on its face was, precisely, a fresh graduate on his first day of work. This time, the headshot landed. 2 deer, 140 pounds of the one wild meat city people pay real money for, and one hunter making a note to bring the mountain god 3 sacrificial animals and good wine at New Year, because this was getting embarrassing for everyone involved. And while the deer bled out, my second cheat finished charging. I set the jade pendant in the blood pit, and 2 deers' worth drank it back to its full, original dark green, and when I closed my hand around it, I felt it again. Spiritual energy threading into my palm, the battery that had taught me the beast taming art restored and humming. Every kill from now on wasn't just meat and money, it was fuel. Level 5 and its beast taming seal, the one that subdues even unfamiliar wild beasts, had just moved from someday to on the roadmap. What I didn't see was the epilogue the forest wrote behind me. An hour after we packed out, something came to the tree where I'd hung the mountain god's share of intestines, something yellow, black-spotted, 1.3 meters of body with 1 meter of tail, and swallowed the offering in one gulp, like weather. Then it announced itself to the empty slopes with a short, sharp, faintly metallic roar. My trap robber had a character model now. The mountain god's tribute had been intercepted by a leopard, and it had developed a taste for the easy calories on my trap line. Down in the village, meanwhile, my cage patent had fully metastasized. The riverbank was now the team's social club, clusters of men lifting traps to applause, and I entertained myself with the prophecy of next spring. Second team copies the cages. Both banks bristle with them. Someone steals someone's fish, and it resolves via the traditional cross-river protocol of, "What are you looking at?" / "Try looking again," followed by a scheduled bridge brawl and 2 captains slapping their own men's wrists. Fine by me. When the teams clash, a Li stands in the front row. That's just citizenship. My business had moved up the mountain, where the walls are higher and the margins are better. And the very next morning, the margins introduced themselves in person. At the commune black market, a tout stopped us at the gate. His boss liked mountain game and would take everything. Full price, 0 haggling. The boss arrived standing up in a tricycle basket like a parade float, hopped down, and offered cigarettes, filtered ones, luxury tier, and I nearly dropped mine when the face loaded. Wang Yong. In my last life, this man went from the commune's only private restaurant to restaurants across the entire province, one of those names every trader of my era knew by heart. Right now, in 1978, he was the black market's quiet king, and he weighed my 2 deer, called it an even 100 yuan. Consider it making friends, bring me anything good you pull out of those mountains, and rode off. My brother stood there whispering, 100 yuan, 100 yuan like a mantra, and I stood there running very different math. I had just shaken hands with a future provincial empire while it was still small enough to shake hands with. The mountain feeds my family. Connections like this one feed generations. The county run rounded out the ledger. The second jar of badger oil graded first class again at the pharmacy, 95 yuan, with saleswoman Wu Xiaoyun now openly beaming the young hunter, whose 2 visits equaled half a year of her salary. Her older colleague spent the next 10 minutes teasing her scarlet. I remained happily oblivious and happily married, the 2 best states a man can hold simultaneously. Then the shopping list of a man rebuilding a clan. Vanishing cream for my wife and my mother. Dried tobacco for my father, who'd quietly given up smoking during the poor years because a son's business is putting his father's pipe back in his hand. Needles, thread, spare jars, a pack of proper cigarettes for myself as a working man's ration, and a savings line opened toward a watch because multi-day winter hunts run on knowing the hour. And on the way to the bus, 1978 handed me one last gift. A crowd in a side street, a man urging his wife to hurry before the ticket-free candy sells out. And when I shouldered in to buy some for my girls, the vendor behind the crate of cellophane-wrapped tricolor candy looked up and said, "Ming Fei?" It was Ren Guang and Li Wei and Xiao Bo on the cash box, my sworn brothers, the ones who'd spent years trying to drag me out of my rot to work with them, whose actual business I'd never once bothered to learn in my last life. This was it. Riding the first gray cracks in the planned economy, selling coupon-free candy in county side streets, moving a full crate in the 10 minutes I stood there. In the other timeline, these men built a department store while I drank, then taught a broken 50-year-old widower the mountain goods trade, lent him money, opened doors, and invoiced him nothing. In this timeline, their brother Ming Fei had just walked up to their stall 20 years early, young, sober, flush with mountain money, and very, very interested in what they were building. I got a live demo of the trade's occupational hazard about 90 seconds later. Small tigers sprinted in hissing, "Someone's coming," and the entire operation, crate, scale, stools, 4 grown men, despawned in 20 rehearsed seconds, leaving me standing alone in an empty street as 3 policemen jogged past chasing shadows. They arrest vendors, not customers. I got one bored glance from men already wearing the faces of cops who know today's quarry has outpracticed them. Half an hour later, the brothers collected me at the station and kidnapped me to their rented rooms for the drinking session I dodged on the night of my rebirth. Xiao Bo frying pork belly over honeycomb briquettes, 3 braised dishes, peanuts, egg drop soup, and the throat-scorching bulk liquor that real men at the foot of the mountain drink, while calling bottled 40-proof office worker water. 4 gin of it vanished in an hour, along with 20 years of my guilt. Ren Guang clinked my cup alone and delivered the whole speech in one line. "You figured it out yourself, that's enough. Anything happens, come to me." And Lei Wu, 3 cups deep, leaked the thing they'd been hiding. Months ago, when Guo Chuan's crew was loudest with the word "HEIRLESS," my brothers had scheduled a gang fight over my honor and won it, and never told me, so I wouldn't feel the shame of needing defending. I drank to every one of them twice. And then, drunk and honest, they opened their books to me. Tricolor candy was the smallest line item. They moved anything the gray market would carry: food, cloth, toys, clothes, everything except guns and ammunition. And then the sentence that snapped my entire future into alignment. "You hunt, we sell, ginseng, bear gallbladder, whatever the mountains give you, we'll beat any pharmacy's price, and we know quiet buyers with deep pockets." There it was, the exact machine that had saved my broken old self in the last life, offering itself to my young self 20 years early. I extract, my sworn brothers distribute, Wang Yang's restaurant empire buys the meat, the county pharmacy buys the oil. A complete supply chain for a man whose dangerous mountain was rapidly becoming a private ATM with a beast-tamed security department. I signed on over the 6th cup, one condition attached. They take their margin, always, non-negotiable, and we sealed it the traditional way, by roasting the snoring small tiger over his hopeless crush on a hospital director's daughter, with me, a man holding 40 bonus years of understanding how courtship actually works, dispensing the era's most anachronistic dating advice to general awe. They stuffed a free bag of candy into my basket over my violent objections, and I rode home, drunk, asleep, and richer in the only currency that compounds: people. The next trips up the mountain were a settling into mastery and a quiet gear upgrade across the board. The dogs had become a system, Fu Bao and Mao Chiu flanking rabbits in pincer movements and presenting kills like tribute. 7. Head of small game before lunch, without me raising the rifle. The bee feud got settled with tools, as human feuds should be. I built a 4-meter ladder from 3 saplings right under the cliff hive, borrowed my father's beekeeping hood, along with his rule, delivered like scripture. Bees survive winter on their honey, take 2/3, never more, that's the law. Climbed into a black, roaring cloud of extremely justified fury, and broke off 8 fat golden combs while the swarm bounced off my veil like hail on a roof. Wild mountain honey, comb and all, chewable, floral, miles past any beekeeper's product. And I stood there drooling, ate exactly 1 piece, and packed the rest home for my daughters, my parents, and my wife, because that's what the strong back is for. Fu Bao, stung about the muzzle into a comedy balloon, received 2 consolation combs and whatever dignity he had left. On the way out, I informed the seething hive I'd see them at spring bloom. We're partners now. They just haven't signed yet. Deeper in, at a waterfall pool, like a cutout from a painting, I found the winter base, a natural rock overhang, dry, clean, defensible, properly distanced from the water, never camp on an animal's commute. That 2 brothers and 2 days of work would turn into our Tangzi house, the shelter that unlocks multi-day deep hunts. Its only sitting tenants were 2 hedgehogs, curled into offended pincushions, so I did the obvious thing and beast tamed them in 10 minutes flat, and walked out with 2 purring, musk-sweet hedgehogs riding in my basket, house pets for my daughters, on a live-in contract as bug and mouse control. And sitting in that rock shelter, pendant in palm, I ran the recharged stone through a full cultivation cycle and finally parsed my cheat's whole architecture. This is a spiritually dead age, 0 ambient chi anywhere, which is why the art can't be practiced bare, and the pendant is the beast taming sect's workaround, a converter that drinks the blood of wild beasts and turns it into the spiritual energy I cultivate with hunt. Feed the stone, grow stronger, hunt bigger. The perfect gameplay loop. One more session and I'd touch level 2. Somewhere upslope, a black-spotted trap robber with a metallic roar was eating my mountain god offerings and getting bolder, and I was, cycle by cycle, becoming exactly the kind of thing it should not want to meet. I misjudged the light that day and came out of the tree line in full dark, navigating by starlight with a rifle and 2 dogs and no flashlight, and a mile from the village, 2 flashlight beams found my face. My brother's voice cracked with relief. "It's Ming Fei, father, it's Ming Fei." My lame father and my brother, out on the mountain road at night, searching for me. The old man's greeting, when I jogged up, was a single disapproving snort, which, in Li Wei, is a sob of relief. Walking home between them in the flashlight beams, my father dropped one sentence that reopened the family's oldest wound. "In the mountains, watch the beasts, and watch your partner harder. Some people are worse than beasts." We both went quiet because we knew exactly which person. Here's why my father limps, and why I hate the second team on principle. 2 years ago, hunters' licenses being 1 per team, my father partnered with the second team's licensed gunner, a man named Gao Fen, to take a boar sounder. Gao Fen's first shot missed and enraged a tusked giant. As it charged, my father coolly broke its leg with 1 round and needed his partner to buy him 1 second with a second shot. Any shot. And Gao Fen climbed a tree. Climbed a tree. My father killed the boar alone with his second round, but several hundred pounds of momentum arrived anyway and shattered his leg. And then, the part that still boils my blood, at the trailhead, in front of both teams, Gao Fen flipped the story, claimed my father's rash shot ruined the plan, claimed he'd fired the kill shot from the tree, claimed he'd saved my father. The liar's version nearly stuck. It ended in a 2-team melee, a township mediation, a payoff, and a proud gunner hobbling for life while his slanderer walked away whole. Even rotten years me had managed one thing right back then. I'd led my brothers onto the only bridge between the teams and made every second team man who crossed it regret the route for 3 days. It hadn't been enough. Debts like that don't close. They sit in the ledger and wait. Home was the antidote. My wife red-eyed at the gate, running a full limb-by-limb inspection. My mother covering her own relief by lecturing my wife on hunter's wife composure. His father vanished into the mountains for days. You learn to sleep. And me unpacking treasure for the whole clan. Bowls of wild comb honey pressed on my protesting sister-in-law over her. It's too valuable, with the family's official position, ruled by my father. City people don't deserve the real thing anyway. Then I produced the 2 hedgehogs for my daughters, who fell instantly in love, all except Mei Mei, my little foodie, who looked at the adorable spined puffballs and asked, with complete sincerity, "Dad, is this edible?" "No, Mei Mei. The hedgehogs are staff. The pheasants are food." Important org chart distinction. I built them a mud and wattle house by the gate opposite Fu Bao's, and they assumed their duties as the most pampered pest control department in the province. That night, I held my wife while she finally said the fear out loud. "When you went in with your father, I wasn't scared because he was there. Alone is different." And I promised her care without promising her cowardice, kissed her goodnight, and made one more silent entry on the long list titled "Things I Will Never Let Happen Twice." The 5th daughter's little cold after New Year that old me waved off. Acute pneumonia. Not this run. I'd be watching that baby like a border sentry all winter. And then the bridge called in the old debt with perfect dramatic timing. My nephew came sprinting. "Second uncle, our team and second team are fighting." The cage war had arrived exactly on schedule, both banks bristling with copied traps, my cousin Mingzi exchanging stones across the water. And by the time I shoved to the front of the crowd on the bridge, the 2 teams were locked in the ancient ritual of cross-river insult. I stepped up beside my cousin and posted the standard challenge. 1-on-1 or all in, pick one, I'll take either. And the answer that came back off the far bank was aimed below the belt with sniper care. Well, well, the table flipper's son. "Your father flips blame, you flip mattresses, and the heirless one wants to fight?" and out of the second team crowd stepped a bearded slab of a man, 1.8 meters, 200 pounds of mountain muscle, Gao Guang, Gao Shun's son, the slanderer's boy, grown rich and loud this year off his father's stolen reputation, strutting to Midbridge to volunteer. The mountain god writes better scripts than I ever could. I turned and waved my own team back, personal grudge, this one's mine, and the two of us had the bridge alone, 400 villagers holding their breath on the banks. Everyone, including my own first team, quietly preloaded my funeral. He was bigger, harder, mountain fit, and I was 3 days removed from being the village joke. He came in grinning, telegraphing a haymaker the size of a ham. Old me would have ducked, danced, prayed for an opening. New me planted the right foot, turned the hip, and met his fist head-on with mine. One punch. Bone met beast tamed bone, and his 4 fingers folded like kindling. The grin became a shriek. He'd punched a cliff, and the cliff had punched back. And while he cradled his hand, I crossed the bridge deck like an arrow and buried a second punch in his stomach that folded 200 pounds of bully into a shrimp and refunded his lunch onto the planks. Then, for the audience on both banks, I gave the moment its canonical ending, grabbed his collar and his belt, pressed all of Kaoshan's son overhead like a weightlifter locking out at the bar, held him there 2 full seconds while the first team bank detonated, and threw him off the bridge into the river. Who else? 20-some second team men took one synchronized half-step backward. The math on their faces was legible from across the water. He ate Gao Guang's best punch and lifted him like carry-on luggage. That's not a man. That's a bear wearing a man's skin. Nobody volunteered. The captains arrived on cue, performed the ritual exchange of harsh words, ratified the only possible cage treaty, your bank is yours, ours is ours, and marched their teams home. First team roaring like it was New Year, second team silent around one dripping, steaming deserter. And my cousin Mingza threw an arm around my shoulder with the wide eyes of a man rediscovering a relative and booked me for drinks that night because for years this cousin had defended the heirless brother's name with his fists while I hid at home, and today I'd finally shown up to my own war. I wasn't quite done performing. Down at the riverbank, my brother was practicing with father's stone-weight bow, 5 of 10 on a board at 50 meters, honest progress, and he handed it over with a grin. Your turn, see how much you've lost. The bow came up feather light in my new hands. First arrow, center. Second, center, faster. Then I strapped on the quiver and did the thing nobody at that river had ever seen. Shooting on the move, walking, then running, then jumping, arrow after arrow, every single one into the heart of the board until the plank, drilled through and through, gave up and fell over backward. Both banks had gathered by then, first team roaring at every impact, second team clustered silent across the water. It was deliberate. Every arrow was a press release. For years, the region's headline had been, Kaoshan Village has a lazy, heirless hooligan who shamed his family, and his wife had walked the village under pointed fingers, and his parents had eaten the sneers in silence. Today's headline, shipping out by every road at gossip speed, was different. The man who hunted bears beside Li Wei is back, and his father's bow felt too light for him now. A 3-stone bow, I noted, and heavy arrows. Sometimes, in the mountains, a bow beats a gun. I'd be needing both. Wishlist updated. That night's victory drinks at my cousin An Fu's turned into a board meeting. Over stewed fish and my squirrel heist nuts, the talk drifted where village talk always drifts. Money, and the absence of it. And my tough cousin dropped his guard for one honest minute. 3 half-grown boys at home. The age where a kid eats his father into the ground. The cages are dead now. But what else is there? So I made the offer that had been compiling since Ren Guang's rented room. I know a way to earn. It's a little dangerous. Do you dare? 3 men leaned in and leaned right back out at the word mountains, because every man at that table grew up on Changbai arithmetic, bears and boars on one side, 3 families only breadwinners on the other. And that's when the day's theatrics cashed out. I laid the real pitch. I'd found a stand of Korean pine heavy with cones, the tree that refuses to fruit until it's 30 years old, which is exactly why pine nuts cost what they cost, barely an hour past the road's end. They climb. Every mountain-foot man owns cat claw shoes, spiked irons for scaling trunks. I stand under the trees with the Type 56 and 2 dogs and guarantee the ground floor. Profits split even, stated out loud up front, because nothing kills brotherhood faster than an unspoken ledger. An Fu stared at me, the man who'd folded Gao Guang with one punch and shot a plank to death on the run, then slammed his cup down empty. The bold get rich and the timid starve. I'm in. Guoyang followed, then my brother, and An Fu sheepishly asked if his little brother Dewei could come too, newly married, wife expecting, desperate to fill the nest before the family split. Of course he could. That's the whole point of a strong back. You stand under it, and your people climb. Dawn found 5 men and 2 dogs on the mountain road, and the pine stand paid like a signed contract. 4 men spidering up 30-year trunks in cat claw shoes, poles hanging off their belts like tails, and then the sweetest percussion in the northern woods. Thump, 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 cones raining onto the needles until the forest floor looked upholstered in money. 10, 12 cones a tree, 22 urea sacks by mid-afternoon. My cousins grinning so wide their faces filed complaints, half drunk on discovering what I'd been quietly living for a week. The mountain pays anyone brave enough to walk in with the right escort, and then the escort earned its wage, because the mystery predator finally stopped being a mystery. Barking exploded from the perimeter, real combat barking, and I sprinted toward it with the rifle up and found my 2 dogs locked in a rolling fight with a leopard. 1.40 m of black rosetted cat with 1 meter of tail, my trap robber, my offering thief, the metallic roar with a body attached, and it had picked the worst possible day, because behind me 4 unarmed men were up trees, and a leopard is the finest tree climber on the mountain. Fu Bao fought it head-on, while Mao Qiu orbited its rear, the old 2-dog geometry that keeps either one from dying, but they were losing, and slowly. No clean shot in a dogfight, I had to thread it. Bang! The round took the leopard through the right hind thigh, blood jumped, and it screamed that metal scream, shook both dogs off, and poured itself into the forest in 3 bounds. I called the dogs off the chase instantly. You do not send 2 dogs after a wounded leopard, that's how you buy 2 funerals with 1 bullet, and fell back to cover the trees. Fu Bao had paid the toll, raked bloody down his body, 1 deep bite in the left shoulder, a throat strike he dodged by inches. I put my hand on his back right there and ran the beast taming true chi through him and got my first field demo of what the art is actually for. The bleeding stopped under my palm, the claw rakes closed while I watched, the bite scabbed over in minutes, and my dog stood up and shook himself like a young hound fresh off the bench. In the old sect's day, beast tamers ruled precisely because of this. A sword immortal is 1 man, but a man whose beasts heal under his hand fields an army. My cousins came down the trunks white-faced, a leopard here on the outer slopes, and the day's courage meter was spent. We sacked what was down, hauled 20 bags out in 2 fast trips. They flat refused to let me carry more than 1 load. Your job is the gun, Mingfei, and physically confiscated my second sack, cached 2 bags for me to fetch solo tomorrow, and beat the dark to my second uncle's yard, where the whole household turned out to paw at the cones, and my second uncle, mortally offended by my polite refusal, roared, "A meal won't bankrupt me," and marched 5 sweating men into stewed fish and bulk liquor. Over dinner, we planned the industrial phase. Cones, fire-dried this late in the season, nuts beaten out with sticks, sorted, and then the master step, pan roasting, where the heat either wakes the oil or murders it. 1,000+ pounds of raw cones en route to becoming the clan's New Year money. But under the warm noise of that table, I was keeping my own quiet ledger. The leopard was wounded now, my bullet parked in its thigh, and a wounded leopard doesn't leave. It gets hungrier, angrier, bolder, and it already knew where my traps sat, where my trails ran, where the easy meat lived, somewhere. Upslope, in the dark, it was licking a hole I'd put in it and learning to hate the smell of me. Fine, the feeling was mutual, and only one of us could reload. Home that night handed me the reason I do any of this. My wife met me at the door with a conspirator's smile and pointed at the inner room. The 3rd and 4th girls had refused to sleep because Mom and Nai had said Dad's mountain work was dangerous, and 4-year-olds do not log off while their father is unaccounted for. 2 little heads popped up off the kang the second I walked in. I tucked them back down, reported that Dad was home and would go beat more meat tomorrow, and proposed a tournament, who falls asleep first. May slammed her eyes shut on the spot. I want to fall asleep before my sister, and lay there theatrically unconscious with the commitment of a tiny method actor, and I nearly ruined the whole match by laughing. 3 weeks ago these children ran from me on sight. Now they can't sleep until they've counted me home. If the mountain ever takes me, let it be after nights like this one. I'd die ahead on the ledger. Next morning I went back up alone, 2 dogs, 1 rifle, 1 unpaid debt. Fu Bao's wounds had knitted overnight under the true chi, and he tracked yesterday's blood like a bill collector, over the hill, into birch and heavy brush, until the wounded leopard burst from cover and turned at bay. The fight was short and lopsided. Its shot thigh had stolen its speed. My second bullet took its foreleg. The dogs pinned it, and I was closing in with the chin blade for the finisher when the bushes behind it chirped, and 2 leopard cubs no bigger than house cats crept out, hissing at me with everything their tiny bodies could render. A mother, with cubs, and everything changed. There's a hunter's law older than any license. You don't take the pregnant, and you don't take a mother with young. The famine years deleted that law from everyone. A starving man doesn't check, and old me wouldn't have blinked. But my family's winter was stocked, my wife's purse was full, and the law was mine to keep again. And when I looked at that pinned, bleeding mother, ignoring the knife, ignoring the dogs at her throat, staring only toward the bushes where her children were, tears actually cutting tracks down her face, I saw, absurdly and completely, my own 5th and 6th. So I called the dogs off, and instead of a pelt, I decided to recruit. I laid my palm on her skull and sent the true chi in, and she refused. A wave of pure feral hatred slamming my energy back out. A beast choosing death over a master with her cubs on the line. Magnificent, honestly. 10 out of 10 would be rejected again. So I paid the premium tier the art specifies for the unwilling. Forced a drop of my own essence blood from my fingertip to her forehead and wrote it in. And this time the taming took 2 full hours of it, at a cost the manual had severely undersold. When I lifted my hand, the world went black at the edges and I nearly face-planted into the leaves. Essence blood is life, not effort. Noted, filed, to be avoided, but paid, this once, gladly. Because when it was done, I dug both of my own bullets out of her legs with the chin blade. She lay still for it, twitching but silent, tougher than most men I've met, healed the wounds under my palm, and stood up the newest, deadliest member of the household. A full-grown leopard, mine to the bone, black rosettes everywhere. So I named her with my signature naming genius, HEIRLESS. Then, propped against a birch too drained to stand, guarded in a ring by 2 dogs and a leopard, with 2 cubs asleep in my lap after 20 minutes of taming each, I discovered what a leopard on payroll actually means. I can't hunt today, I told the crew, so you hunt. And they did. Fu Bao strutting back with a rabbit, Mao Cho with pheasants, and HEIRLESS returning with a hog badger, a genuinely rare drop, delivered to my feet like a cat presenting a trophy, then bounding off for more. My sick day out-earned most men's best day. And when it was time to go, HEIRLESS gave me the scene I'll be carrying for a while. I told her the cubs would winter at my house, warm, fed, safe, returned in spring to learn the forest, and she understood, and lay down on her side to nurse them one last time, a first-time mother past weaning age who couldn't quite say no to her children. I stood quiet and let them finish. Then I packed 2 sleepy leopard cubs into the back basket, told HEIRLESS to stack any lion's mane she found at her den for pickup. Yes, I gave a leopard a side quest. Yes, she accepted, and carried her babies home, stopping to rest 3 times, hollowed out and rich beyond argument. The homecoming was pure theater. 4 daughters swarmed the basket and extracted 2 leopard cubs, instantly the most beloved creatures in the county, chased around the yard in a shrieking, delighted carousel, while the hedgehogs watched from their doorway like scandalized pensioners. My eldest, Xiaohua, the careful one, the one who notices, came to me instead, small face grave. Father, are you unwell? And I pinched her rounder, healthier cheek and sent her to play, adding one more line to the ledger of things worth dying tired for. My mother arrived at a run and scolded me for going deep. My father arrived, took one look at the cubs and blue-screened. Ming Fei, this, you tamed a local leopard? Leopards can't be tamed. How? And I, sipping the honey water my wife pressed into my hands, delivered the century's laziest cover story with a perfectly straight face. Punched it. Asked if it submitted. It didn't, so I punched it again. Eventually it got scared and submitted. Dad, surely a man as mighty as you managed at least 1 leopard back in the day? My father stared at me, said nothing printable, picked up the chin blade, and went off to skin the badger with tremendous violence, while my mother laughed into her sleeve. Somewhere in that same hour, I later learned, my beloved older brother was entertaining the whole Pinecone crew with the true origin story of my transformation. Mother salted the stick first, and the next day he invented the fish cage, and my second uncle had proposed, thoughtfully, salting a stick for Li Wei to see if it produced similar innovations. My legend in this village is now 50% leopard puncher, 50% stick-related miracle. I can live with that split. The pine nut works, meanwhile, hummed along without me. Cones fire-dried, nuts beaten out with sticks and sorted, my father drafted as master roaster. The one step where an old hand's feel for the pan decides whether the oil wakes up or dies. And me assigned to sales, plan already loaded. Ren Guang's crew, county channels, 0 commune-level exposure. 1,000+ pounds of the only nut in the Northeast that outprices meat, rolling on rails toward the clan's fattest new year in years. And then, on a lazy recovery morning, me on a stool with a baby daughter in each arm, watching 4 girls, 2 leopard cubs, and a hedgehog conduct their daily riot. A stranger spawned at my gate, a young woman, city-mannered, hesitating at the threshold of the notorious Li Kai's yard. Excuse me, is this Li Kai's family? An educated youth, one of the city students sent down to the countryside years ago, and this year, with the college entrance exam suddenly restored, every educated youth in the province was moving heaven and earth to get back to the city. Her name was Yang Li Qin, and whatever had driven a respectable Jiqing girl to the gate of the village's reformed Hooligan, it wasn't small. My last life's memory pulled her file instantly. The exam had reopened the door to the city, and every educated youth in the province was clawing through it, but the door had a gatekeeper, a commune official who'd turned return permits into a private toll booth. Gifts if you had money. For those without, his terms only got uglier. Young Li Qin had neither money nor protectors, father dead in a work accident, freeloading relatives bleeding her mother dry back home, and she'd done the most dangerous thing a powerless person can do, refused him flat, then reported him. The report went exactly where reports about powerful men went in 1978, nowhere. So now she was one of 2 educated youths marooned in Kaoshan Village, sleeping with scissors under her pillow and a cabinet against the door, because the village bachelor's stares got hungrier with every girl who left. And here's the part only a reborn man could know. Next year the village school reopens, she becomes its teacher, and stays one for nearly 30 years, unmarried, raising generations of students up out of the dirt. In my old timeline I never once spoke to her. In this one, my 2 eldest walk into her classroom in the fall. A father with a plan does not wait for parent-teacher day. So when this frightened girl asked, barely audibly, whether the rumors were true that Li Kai bartered meat, I rolled out the red carpet, stool, honey water. Xiao Hua dispatched as tiny hostess, and when Yang Li Qin, red to her ears, laid her trade goods on the table, several comic books and 2 pencils, the last valuables a broke Jiqing owns, and whispered that she'd heard Comrade Li wasn't picky, I didn't let her finish the sentence. 3 pounds of badger meat and the fattest pheasant in the house, gutted and plucked, pressed into her arms over her choking protests. My girls start school next year. Knowledge is priceless, worth far more than a little meat. She stared at me like a farmer had just quoted scripture. Then she thanked us, took her month of protein, and walked home a little less afraid of this village. Relationship unlocked. The teacher. Investment horizon. 30 years. The moment she cleared the gate, my wife handed me both babies with a face like an incoming cold front. We were supposed to eat that meat. A whole pheasant for a few children's books. Why is he so stingy with the villagers and so generous with city girls? And stomped off to the kitchen. Took me 10 full seconds to parse the error message. My wife was jealous of a barter transaction. I chased her into the kitchen with a baby under each arm, explaining school, teachers, and long-term daughter investment strategy with the urgency of a man testifying at his own trial. And she was mid-thaw when Jingjing, handing firewood to her sister, delivered the kill shot with a 4-year-old's perfect innocence. Dad, can we eat vinegar directly? Didn't Mom say vinegar is very expensive? Eating vinegar, being what this entire province calls jealousy, my wife went scarlet, stomped her foot, and evicted me from her kitchen on fabricated smoke charges. I fled, laughing, narrating to the babies. Mother is furious. There's danger. Run. Behind us, I'm told. She laughed at herself into the rabbit she was chopping. Lazy I may have been for 6 years, but never once that kind of husband. She knew it. The meat got cooked. Next morning, pine nut industry, grand opening. The whole crew assembled in second uncle's yard around the big pot, and my father, pipe parked behind his back, limp and all, took the stage for the performance of his decade. Because roasting pine nuts isn't cooking, it's alchemy. 200 gin of raw nuts into the pot, 40 minutes of exact stirring, out to the winnowing basket, then the trick nobody younger knew. Water over the hot nuts, and the whole basket crackling open like applause as every shell split on cue. Second uncle gave him a thumbs up. My father accepted it with the modesty of a man accepting a Nobel. Then the salt pass, back in the pot, fine salt sprinkled by eye, once, twice, feel only. The single step where an old hand's palm decides whether the batch sings or burns. I stole a handful off the cooling pile, fragrant, faintly salty, flat out better than the machine-roasted stuff that'll cost tens of yuan a kilo 40 years from now. The old man caught me looking impressed and got so smug he delivered a whole TED talk about how skills once learned are never lost. Young people should watch and learn, and, pointed glance at Guoyong, not everyone is even allowed to witness this stir-fry. My father had gone from planning his own funeral to guarding trade secrets in 3 weeks. The 1978 Patriarch Recovery Program was ahead of schedule. Sales ran on rails. I bussed to the county with a pocket full of samples, sat down with Renguang's crew over stewed cabbage and bulk liquor, and watched Small Tiger casually invent 1978 guerrilla retail. Don't sell at the train station where nobody has spare money. Sell outside movie theaters, half-pound bags, 10-20 bags a man. Small target, widespread, because dating couples will always pay to have something in their hands. And then Renguang did the thing that told me exactly why his crew would be the first in the village with city houses, cars, and eventually villas. He set a price before selling a single bag. 2 yuan a gin, buy the whole lot outright. Resale risk entirely his. There are risks in doing business. We buy by the rules, clearly marked prices. Whether we sell it is on us. No consignment, no maybe. A man who eats plain cabbage for lunch and talks like a wholesaler. When the spring wind finally blows through this country, men like that don't get rich by luck, they get rich on schedule. Weigh in the next dawn. 176 jin on the team's big scale. 352 yuan counted twice in front of everyone, because even between brothers, money gets counted. That's the rule. And then the split, 70 yuan and 4 cents a man. For scale, that's months of a good salary, per head, for 3 days of climbing trees. De Wei, the same cousin who'd nearly rage quit the expedition over one leopard rumor, was now loudly mourning every pine cone we'd left on the mountain and demanding we go earlier next year. I let him have it free of charge. His wife was watching from the doorway, and a young man gets to look bold in front of his wife. Guo Yang went home, slapped the bills against his palm like a croupier paying out, and his wife counted them with her eyes squeezed into happy slits. New pants for the boy whose ankles had outgrown last year's pair. Salt, soy sauce, oil, a real new year. Then he invited the whole crew over for a celebration drink that same night, and got into a loving argument with her about whether tofu and fish wasn't financially reckless. That right there, that argument, is what 70 yuan sounds like in a house that used to count fen. And me? I was watching a village quietly reorganize itself around one reformed hooligan's gravity. My money now had a distribution network. My nuts had a roast master. My mountain had a leopard on retainer. And at the edge of it all, one lazy-eyed local scavenger named Wang the Greedy had started circling my yard, staring at my hanging preserved meat a little too long. My wife had already posted Fu Bao at the gate once. I filed the name without heat. Every fat year grows its own thief. This one just introduced himself early. That afternoon, I hiked up to check on my newest employee. One shout of "Hey Dian" scattered every pheasant on the slope, and a yellow lightning bolt came pouring downhill to headbutt my thigh and purr like a broken tractor, fully healed, true chi boosted, and smug. And with cause. Her new den, a hidden rock crevice curtained with weeds, was stacked with 2 days of gathered lion's mane mushrooms, most fist-sized, some the size of small soccer balls. My leopard had outforaged every man in 3 villages while on medical leave. I filled the whole back basket, promised her another true chi infusion in half a month, so you'll grow strong enough to stop fearing tigers, and first pick of any future loot, at which she barked so smugly at the dogs that both of them pointedly looked away. Office politics had officially reached the animal kingdom. Then one safety briefing. Stay off that far peak. That's the second team hunter's corridor. Out there, men are more dangerous than beasts. A chin scratch goodbye, and home by 4:30 with a fortune in fungus on my back. Except home had a crowd in it. My yard was packed wall to wall. My parents, my brother, the captain, and front and center, flanked by Li Wei and a claque from the first team, Wang the Greedy, mid-speech. The petition of the day. My 2 leopard cubs were a danger to the whole team and should be killed. And credit where it's due. The man had found the one demagogue angle that works on any crowd. Small now, sure, but when they're grown, you can pay for a bitten chicken. Can you pay for a bitten child? The crowd hummed along. My 4 daughters stood huddled in the inner doorway, scared quiet. The cubs pressed silent behind their legs, and that sight adjusted my plans for Wang the Greedy's skeleton considerably. The captain, an old fox, caught my eye first. Ming Fei, take the gun inside. Heavy clothes off. You look tired. Translation. Disarm before you talk, boy. I did. Then I took the floor and didn't argue about leopards at all. Wang the Greedy, you, a petty thief lecturing this team about safety? Ask anyone standing here whose chicken coop you haven't visited, whose cabbages went missing yesterday, and the crowd, invited to remember, remembered. The hum reversed polarity mid-sentence. Someone yelled that if we were expelling threats to the team, the leopards could take a number behind Wang. The Li surname block, half the village, gloriously piled on. Ming Fei taught us all the fish traps, sold us badger meat cheap, led every scrap against the second team. The leopards go back to the mountain in spring, meeting adjourned. Inside 2 minutes, the mob that came to kill my cubs was filing out apologizing. Guo Chuan's crew of toughs considered one last stand, then someone remembered out loud where they'd all been standing when I threw a 200-pound man off a bridge, and the consideration ended. My father evicted Li Wei personally. Third brother's wife, aren't you leaving? And she slunk out without a word. Which left Wang the Greedy himself, edging toward the gate. I started toward him with honest intentions. He dove behind the captain screaming about reprisals, and here the captain performed the finest piece of village jurisprudence I've ever witnessed. Now, Ming Fei. His starting point was good. You men mustn't retaliate. Wink at my mother. And my mother, my sister-in-law, and my wife descended on Wang the Greedy as one, nails first. Men talk reason. We mothers don't know any reason. I only know you scared my granddaughters. While the Li family men stood by in perfect, menacing non-intervention, being scrupulously reasonable as instructed. When Wang's face and hands had achieved the correct texture, the captain called time. Enough. Unreasonable women. Brother Wei, control your family. Everyone observed the legal fiction solemnly, and the captain marched the scratched wretch off with a parting prescription to work more and steal less. Verdict delivered. No man laid a hand. No rule technically broken. The system works. Flawless victory. But walking away, Wang the Greedy's eyes had gone thin and sinister, and the monologue running behind them was the oldest poison in any village. Why did the heirless loser suddenly get to rise? He was a lazy bum like me. Why couldn't he stay one? Now everyone uses him to mock me. I'll make sure they never have a peaceful day. Note the crime I'd committed against this man. None. My sin was improving in his line of sight. Remember the name. Envy with nothing to lose doesn't sulk forever. It files reports to communes. We shook off the whole circus at Guo Yong's table that night. Fish stewed with tofu and glass noodles. Braised pig's head. My cousin pounding the table volunteering to break Wang's legs. And my father, ever the strategist now, waving him down. Too obvious right now. We can't embarrass the captain. We'll find our moment, and he won't forget it. 3 weeks ago, this man was planning his own funeral. Now he's scheduling revenge like calendar invites. And I paid my debts where they were owed. Told Guo Yang straight that tomorrow we'd scout for more red pine forests, so the Pinecone crew becomes an every-year institution. And watched the only non-blood man in the crew, the one who'd quietly done the most work all week precisely because he knew he was the outsider, drain his cup like a man who'd just been handed tenure. Because tomorrow the operation scaled up, my brother and I were going deep, multi-day, to build a Tengzi house, a hunter's permanent forward base. My wife packed the kit without being asked: salt, matches, leg wraps, chin blade, and saw me off before dawn with instructions to eat the preserved meat while I was gone. Don't be stingy, the family's nutrition is not negotiable. At my father's gate, the old man was waiting in the cold to deliver a full safety lecture to my brother. Listen to Ming Fei and everything. Hiding from danger isn't shameful. Avoid other hunters. In the mountains, people are scarier than beasts. And when I archly requested my share of paternal concern, got, why should I care about you? You're cunning as a monkey. Get lost. Followed, as we walked off laughing by. I wish you all the best. I still want to eat bear paws. That's Northeast fatherhood. Love arrives disguised as an insult and an order for exotic takeout. And the second his sons were out of sight, the old man limped inside and grumbled at my mother to look after both daughters-in-law while the men were gone, which she was already planning, and told him so at volume. The build itself was two brothers discovering they were a good machine. Introductions first. At Heidian's den, I called her out, and my brother nearly knocked an arrow before I got, "She's ours," out of my mouth, then stood in awe patting a live leopard's head, and delivered the sibling verdict of the century. So when you said you tamed a leopard, Dad and I assumed you were bragging. Who'd believe a normal person saying that? I had no rebuttal. He was right on both counts. Then, the work. I felled trees by the dozen and dragged them out beer can thick. He, the real carpenter of the family, trimmed, drilled, and joined. We burned a bonfire under the rock overhang for an hour until the fire-brittled stone chipped away by the slab, opening a chamber 3 meters deep, 6 wide, then walled the whole face in with timber and hung an actual door, mortise and tenon, not one nail, solid as the county bank. Dry grass, cotton wadding, quilts, mud from the pond into every crack, ginger-stuffed pheasants grilled with mountain salt for lunch, and a leopard and 2 dogs on perimeter delivering dinner to the doorstep. By nightfall, we had what no hunter in either team had: a warm, defensible, permanent base a full day deep in the mountains, with a fireplace and sheet metal chimney already budgeted for the next trip. Heidian took the crevice 100 meters out as her guard post. The dogs got the indoor beds, and the two of us lay in the dark of a house we'd built since breakfast, planning what to bring next. 2 sons of a man who'd taught us everything he had left, sleeping where only the mountain could hear us. The mountain introduced itself properly around midnight. Wolf howl, far off but crystal clear in the frozen silence, and my brother sat bolt upright like a mousetrap. I talked him down. They're distant, the door holds. Wolves don't storm a built position. And then, because older brothers deserve full honesty, told him about the real nightmare tier. The night a tiger circled this exact kind of shelter with Dad and me inside, back in the day. A tiger's paw swings with the force of a small truck. No Tangzi house survives more than a few. We'd sat awake till dawn listening to it think. It had, eventually, decided we weren't worth the effort. "I'm going back to sleep," my brother said, in the voice of a man who would not be going back to sleep. "Welcome to the family business." Next morning, we went hunting for big cargo, pheasants and rabbits declared beneath our notice, the whole squad on noise discipline, and the mountain made us earn it. A full empty morning, lunch, a change of direction, and then the first snowflakes of the real winter coming down. 10 days to hibernation season. I was mid-daydream about my next acquisition, an eagle, a tamed aerial recon unit. Imagine never walking a ridge blind again, when Heidian came flying back over the hill glowing with professional pride. Follow the leopard. And there, on the open grass between 2 mountains, 2 adult red deer, a couple, the stag's antlers standing off his head like sculpture. 70 meters. 2 shooters. I assigned targets like a fireteam leader. I take the antlers, you take the doe. Aim for the head. A wound is enough because the leopard runs down anything that bleeds. And counted. His arrow left at 2, my bullet left at 3, and still arrived first, taking the stag between the eyebrows. His arrow buried in the doe's belly, and she ran exactly 300 meters before Hei Dian was riding her spine with jaws on her throat, and both dogs anchored to her hind legs. The chin blade finished it clean. My brother stood over half a winter's fortune, breathing hard. First hunt of his life, 1 arrow fired, 1 deer down. Some men wait 30 years for a day like that. He got it in week 1, because his little brother stacked the deck and intends to keep stacking it. Then the logistics comedy. The stag weighed 350 pounds. I carried it back to the tree line solo, 1 leg over each shoulder, and my brother watched with the expression of a man live patching his entire model of his younger sibling, Ming Fei. I used everything I had just to hang the doe. I mumbled something about natural divine strength. Meanwhile, the antlers alone had me giddy for reasons I couldn't share. Worthless in 1978, but hold them 4-5 years. Carry them south to Shenzhen when the Hong Kong money arrives. Those bosses pay stupid prices for exactly this. Long-term hold, buy low, sell in a decade. The organs went to the crew, who'd earned them. The blood went somewhere better. Because as my brother hauled the doe ahead, I slipped the jade pendant into the blood pit and watched it drink, the stone flushing back to that deep, beautiful dark green. 2 red deer's worth of charge, a battery the size of a coin, recharged with what every other hunter pours away into the dirt. Getting home was its own saga. The doe alone nearly folded my brother in half over 2 hours of mountain track, the snow thickening from flakes to a serious road-erasing fall. And the snowfall that gassed us also hit us. 2 men carrying an obscene fortune in venison walked into the village with not one witness, which the strategist in me loved and the fisherman in me mourned. Because what's the point of the catch of a lifetime if the village doesn't watch you carry it twice around the square? The family's reaction had to do. It sufficed. Even my father, a career mountain man, went wide-eyed. 2 big ones in 2 days, your luck is indecent. Family council convened on the spot, and the old man produced a complete commercial plan before his tea cooled. Donkey cart from the captain, sell before the snow deepens, keep half the dough split across the 3 households, the whole family's nutrition, young and old. I added my own line items. Antlers come off and go into storage, dad on saw duty. No sale, nobody here can afford what these will be worth. Nobody argued. Somewhere in the last month, without a vote ever being called, my word had quietly become policy. The captain's door opened to a hind leg of venison and my request. He waved off the gift math. A deer leg for a donkey cart? Go take it, you're saving me the feed. And I corrected him, deadpan. The leg wasn't payment, it was respect for an elder. The cart was a separate favor between family. Old money manners on a new money budget. Behind his closed door, I'm told, his wife did the arithmetic out loud. Antlers, the works, over 1,000 yuan. That family's headed for 10,000 yuan household, and the old fox puffed his pipe and gave her the truth of it. If the mountain were easy, the whole team wouldn't be sitting home in the snow. It's paid for with your life every single trip. At the commune, I drove straight to Qingshan restaurant and Wang Yang, the future tycoon I'd been cultivating since the roe deer sale. Watch how a man built for the next 40 years operates. He didn't recognize me for 3 full seconds, admitted it instantly, out loud, and fined himself a drink and 2 dishes as the apology, converting a slight into a bond in 1 move. Then out back, out of the snow and sight lines, the deal. 466 jin of fresh-killed red deer at my price, accepted without a haggle. I let you name it because I trust you, and it's fair. 714 yuan, counted twice, plus a private room, a hot lunch, an arm around the shoulder, and a field promotion from Boss Hong to Brother Yang. I walked in a supplier and walked out a sworn contact with the best-connected man in the commune. Then the shopping run. 20 caddies of rice, actual rice, 70 cents a pound, porridge for 6 daughters who grew up on coarse grain, 3 caddies of fatty pork, zinc sheet for the Tangzi house chimney, a pot and pan for the base, and 1 nudge to my brother. Vanishing cream is good for a woman's skin, you know. And the most frugal man in the village, drunk on his first hunting money, bought his wife face cream and his daughter a hair tie. 2 households worth of winter happiness in 1 donkey cart. And on the ride home, snow hissing past, I sat in the basket with the pendant in my fist and did the thing I'd been saving the charge for. Pushed the Beast Taming Art at the wall it had been leaning on for a week. With 2 deers worth of blood in the stone, the wall didn't hold. Level 2. I hopped off the cart at the village gate and threw a few test punches into the falling snow. Strength up, body lighter, true chi thicker, every future beast boost stronger for it. My brother glanced back at his little sibling shadowboxing in a blizzard and smiled the tolerant smile of the steady son, just like Dad says. Not steady enough. Brother, steady is for men who can't tame leopards. That evening, the whole clan on my kang around a pot of stewed venison, we held the money ceremony and got the only kind of family fight worth having. I counted out an even split, 349.70 each. My brother slammed his hand down on the bills and refused upward. Half would be a slap in my face. 2/3 you, 1/3 me, or your sister-in-law will say we robbed you. I called it an insult. He called it fairness. We glared at each other across 700 yuan, each trying to force money into the other's pocket, and my father sat there watching his sons fight over who takes less with an expression I hadn't seen on him in 20 years of 2 lifetimes. Then he gavelled it with the oldest law there is, mountain hauling rules. A share for each man, a share for each dog, an extra share for the gunner. 4 shares plus 1, 3/5 me, 2/5 him. Both of us shut up instantly. You can argue with a brother, you can't argue with the rules, and my brother pocketed his 280, already spending it out loud. School for Xiaoming and his little brother next year, so nobody calls another generation of us illiterate. 1 hunt, 1 generation's trajectory, bent, my own. Share went home into my wife's hands, and she counted it like a woman defusing a bomb, laid it in the iron box in the cabinet, and asked me, face close, eyes enormous, to pinch her because 700 yuan in the house had to be a dream. I pinched her cheek instead and handed her the roadmap, 2,000 in savings by S. Pring, school for Xiaohua and Jingjing. Then we rebuild this house in brick, and rice porridge with minced venison for the little ones. Every day, no economizing. Let 5th and 6th drink it and grow strong. She went off to the kitchen to make my trail pancakes, humming a song she didn't know the name of, Xiaohua and Jingjing trotting after her to feed the fire, while Jia planted herself in front of me and demanded hunting stories until bedtime, and got them, gently edited, her and Cece gasping, "Dad is amazing," at all the correct moments. There are richer men than me in this country. I doubt it, but statistically there must be a few. Back up the mountain through snow so thick we navigated by dog. Day 1. Infrastructure. My brother built the fireplace from Dad's old fire bricks, while I hauled pond mud, and by dusk, the Tangzi house had a zinc chimney, real heat, and no carbon monoxide roulette. I also flipped a bluestone slab at the pond and found crayfish under it, Changbai stream crayfish, sweeter than the famous kind, plus a few hibernating snow frogs I deliberately left alone, because I alone knew that in a few years snow frog paste sells for buy an apartment money, and some savings accounts are better left sleeping in the mud. We spent 2 hours collecting crayfish as a surprise for the kids. Days 2 and 3, the mountain's other lesson, nothing. A few pheasants, not 1 rabbit, my brother deflating hourly, and me feeding him Dad's old catechism, patience. The mountain doesn't run payroll. Day 4, noon, homeward bound, Fu Bao froze at a brush line, and there, huddled against the storm in 1 steaming pile, a whole herd of wild boar. 1 tusked boar of 400 pounds minimum, 2 sows, 6 half-grown shoats, 9 pigs, a year of lard for 3 households, standing in 1 bush, guarded by the animal that crippled my father. First pig, second bear, third tiger, the old hunters rank them, and it's only half a joke, so we planned it like a 2-man war. My brother circled downwind to a climbable tree with the whole animal squad as bodyguard, under strict orders. If the big one comes at you, you climb. No heroics, survival first. He looked around my side of the field, found me a bare mound and no tree, and asked the obvious. I patted the rifle. This isn't a fire poker. Then I barehanded my trigger finger, warmed it inside my coat, crawled 7 meters for the angle, and opened the ball at 50 meters through blowing snow. First shot, neck, the boar reared up roaring. Second, snout, down to its knees, and then it did what boars do, got up with its little eyes gone red and charged me, 400 pounds through the snow like a fanged locomotive, while I stood up deliberately, tall and loud, to keep its hatred aimed at me and off my treeless brother. The herd exploded the other way, into the arrows and the animals, Heidian flattening a sow, the dogs turning the shoats in barking arcs, but my whole world had narrowed to arithmetic. 1 bullet left in the chamber's economy of time, 1 head, closing at charge speed, 40 meters, 30, 20, 10, now. Theaters, 30, 20, 10, now. The shot took it square in the skull, and physics did the rest. Front legs buckled at full sprint, and the beast somersaulted, a full, absurd, 360-degree cartwheel, and piled up dead 2 meters from my boots. I stepped over it without ceremony, because sentiment is for after the credits, dropped the second sow at a run, culled 3 shoats clean around my own dogs, and watched the crew drag 2 more back from the tree line. 8 of 9. 1,000+ pounds of pork in the snow, 1 pig's worth of escape money paid to the mountain as tax. My brother came down off his adrenaline slapping my arm. I nearly died watching that thing charge you, and I quoted our father back at him about staying calm, and did not mention that even I had been counting meters in heartbeats. The aftermath ran like ritual. Lungs to the dogs, heart and liver to Heidian as employee of the month. A plate of intestines hung on a branch for the mountain god. Everyone on the mountain gets a cut. That's why the mountain keeps paying out. And the blood pit got its usual discreet visitor before the snow covered the evidence. Pendant in, dark green out. We sledded the whole herd home behind 2 ropes and 1 sunset, and that night over pig's trotter soup in the firelit Tangzi house, my brother said, firm as a man proposing marriage, "Ming Fei, I want to buy a gun." Today had settled it. A bow is yesterday's weapon, and he refused to be my passenger. And when I offered to just split the boar money to cover the approximately 600 yuan type 56, he turned that down too, with the most him sentence he has ever produced. Clear accounts, even between brothers. We're both heads of households now. Clean books is how your wife and my wife stay friends for 30 years. Besides, once it's bought, whose gun is it if the money's tangled? My steady brother, can't read, thinks in constitutional law. And down in the village, our success had begun to curdle in exactly the pot you'd expect. Li Wei, third branch's pride, last seen leaving my yard at my father's roar, had heard the legend of Renguang's county money and concluded commerce was easy. He and Guo Chuan would each throw in 30 yuan, buy at the commune black market, flip it in the county. 30 yuan he didn't have, so out came Nai's hoard. 20 yuan in 50-cent, 10-cent, even 2-cent notes, a lifetime of squeezed coins, handed to the golden grandson with a blessing. My Li Wei can write. He'll outdo those illiterate Dalins. He'll marry a city girl, while third uncle, who knew precisely what his son was, sighed and covered the balance anyway, because what if? And then, through the window, they watched two brothers haul a loaded sled past their gate, and Nai's commercial instincts lit up like a stove. Let those two risk their lives in the mountains, and my Li Wei sells their game in the city, a risk-free business. Third uncle actually tried to stop her. Ming Fei has changed, don't start another fight, and got run clean over. Can't a grandmother even look? So the sled got its ambush 100 meters from home, Nai puffing through the snow yelling, "Little Ming Fei, stop! I'm your grandma." The same grandma of the funeral fund speech, now flagging down our pork like a toll collector, with Li Wei rubbing her back in full, dutiful grandson theater, and Qing materializing to sweep snow off the carcasses with her own hands, counting out loud. 1, 2, 3, 7. Several families could eat for a year. How much would this sell for? 2 lifetimes of experience have taught me exactly one reliable law of village economics. The relatives who wouldn't lend you funeral money can smell a windfall through a blizzard, uphill, faster than a bear smells blood. We stood there hungry, exhausted, and cornered, and Nai opened her mouth with a proposition already chambered. Third uncle, of all people, diffused it. "The boys are starving, mother. Let them go eat," and herded his family home, where the real meeting convened without us. Qing worked Nai like a bellows. "You live with us. We do your washing." The eldest owes his mother a token of filial piety. One small pig isn't wrong to ask, is it? And Nai nodded along and suited up for war. I refused to believe my own eldest son would disown me. I carried him 10 months. He grew up on my milk. Third uncle watched his mother and wife sharpen the family blood into a crowbar, thought, "I'd bet money on the exact words." Ming Fei has changed. This exploit's patched now, and said nothing, because if mother failed, he lost nothing. If she succeeded, he ate pork. Neutrality is also a strategy. Remember that about him. Home first, though, and the dogs had beaten us there and announced us, so the whole clan poured into my yard to receive 7 wild boars, with what I can only call inflation. A month ago, 1 badger caused a village-wide sensation. Now 1,000 pounds of pork got an impressed nod and immediate logistics. The real audience was my nephews. Jialei stood over the sled, openly drooling. "Second uncle, can we eat our fill tonight?" A boy who'd eaten meat twice a year his whole childhood, suddenly living next door to an uncle who hauls it home by the sled load. "You want to eat your fill, you work," I told them. And 2 teenagers scalded, scraped, and gutted a 100-pound pig with the fervor of the recently converted. And the disposal plan my brother and I had settled on the walk down said everything about what this family was becoming. 1 half-grown pig split 3 ways and salted. We sell for money, but we don't starve ourselves doing it. We're not those misers who hang 1 pickled vegetable over the table to look at and a cut set aside for our married sister, Li Lan. My father approved the whole slate, then abdicated with visible satisfaction. "You 2 brothers caught them. I don't give opinions." The patriarch, delegating. 3 weeks ago, he couldn't lift his eyes off the floor. Then Fu Bao barked, and I told Dad and my brother, "Watch this, I'll bet it's Nai here for her filial pork," and went out to collect my winnings. Nai, Li Wei, and, interesting, Guo Chuan, all smiles, all snow-dusted, the unpleasantness of the funeral fund day apparently patched out by the smell of meat. Nai took the seat of honor as her birthright and opened the auction. The pitch, delivered by Li Wei, with Nai providing the moral soundtrack, "He's your cousin, bones break but tendons connect, consider it helping your brother." The boys were going into business, and they'd generously take my 1,000 pounds of boar off my hands at 4 cents a pound. 4 cents. Commune pork ran 1.2 yuan with a ration coupon. They'd even pay a whole 50 yuan up front, the rest whenever. I looked at Li Wei, then passed him at Guo Chan, and deployed a word from 40 years in the future. "Is this idiot's offer yours too? Did you come to trade or to get beaten?" And credit to Guo Chan, He'd actually come with a real number, 90 cents, and was visibly dying inside at his partner's opening bid. But his structure was still 100 yuan down, the rest after we sell, which in Li Wei adjacent hands means the rest, never. You want to render oil from my bones, I said. And if you get caught speculating, I eat the loss in silence. Hard pass. Take your idiot home. Nai tried to reload one more time. Mingfei, this wild boar. And I finally set the whole nondard on the table, quietly, in front of my father. Nai. I know what you say about me at third uncle's house. You want Li Wei to inherit from the heirless one? He doesn't rate it. The only reason I still call you Nai is sitting right there, smoking his pipe. Don't spend that balance down to zero. She stared at me like the furniture had spoken. Guo Chuan, a bully, but a bully with a functioning risk assessment module, who had personally watched me airmail a man off a bridge, excused himself at speed, and on his way out told Li Wei they'd discuss things later, in the tone of a man already drafting the demotion paperwork. Even the muscle was learning which cousin was the reliable one. Then, because my father's face mattered more than my grievance, I went to the kitchen, took the chin blade, cut a whole hind leg, and set it in front of her. From my father to his mother, take it and go. She went. And outside, wounded and welling up, Li Wei swore his oath into the snow. He'd make it big in the city. He'd repay Nai, unlike that ungrateful Li Kai. And Nai stroked his hair and told him not to let little Mingfei outdo him. 30 yuan of 2-cent notes against my rifle, my leopard, and 40 years of tomorrow's newspapers. Sure, race you, cousin. The afternoon held something better and something worse. Better, meat delivery to my eldest sister Li Lan across the river in the second team, and the door opened on the one corner of this family that had never needed a patch. In my first life, when I finally started my business, this sister and her honest farmer husband emptied their savings into my hands without being asked. So when they saw 20 pounds of prime boar on their table, they did the most them thing possible, refused it. Brother-in-law flapping his hands. That's money. You have 8 mouths. We'll keep 2 ribs. Sell the rest. My sister patting my back and scolding me for not knowing how to run a household. I had to invoke the full tonnage, 8 boars, over 1,000 pounds. I promise we are selling some, to force a fair market gift on the only relatives who never once tried to take anything. And under the laughing, I was running arithmetic that hurt. My sister is in her 20s, and her hands are an old woman's, thin as bird claws, worked half to death by an era and a frugal husband who saves them both into an early grave. On the walk out, I was genuinely weighing whether to beat my brother-in-law on principle and had to concede my wife's point. The man looked thinner and older than my sister did. You can't punch poverty, you can only out-earn it and share. Worse, the second delivery. My wife's younger sister, Xiao Juan, married, over my past self's sneering indifference, to a genuine hooligan named Guo Bing. The door alone told the story. He saw me and frowned, then saw the pork belly and lit up like a slot machine hitting jackpot. Brother Kai, come in, it's cold. His mother came out next and got 2 full sentences of hostility in. Why are you visiting again, in this snow? Before the word meat reached her, at which point her face performed a full costume change mid-syllable, and she whisked the pork belly to the stove and hid it under a pot lid, physically guarding it in case I filed for repossession. 2 sentences, that's all it took to read the whole household. This is what my wife walks into every time she elects her little sister. My fist closed under the table and opened because the mother-in-law is the one door I can't kick without the debris landing on Xiao Juan. And then Xiao Juan came out of the inner room, and I forgot the mother-in-law entirely. The girl I remembered, lively, quick, a little spirit monster of a sister-in-law, came out timid, whispering her hellos, thinned down past what my wife had warned me about, past exaggeration, to skin over bone. Any thinner and the wind takes her. In my first life, I never once looked closely at this house. In this one, standing in it, the account settled itself in my chest with a cold click. My old self's contempt had helped shove this girl toward the nearest man who'd take her, and the nearest man had been this. And I knew something nobody in that room knew. In the erased timeline, this house eventually costs Xiao Juan her life, and my wife never truly spoke to me again after it. The pork belly under the pot lid wasn't going to fix that. Something considerably less polite was going to have to. I stood up so fast the whole room flinched, and my wife's hand on my arm was the only thing that rerouted me from the immediate plan to the correct one. Because here's the tactical map I could see, and the mother and son couldn't. Between the 2 teams, there's exactly one iron exception to the no outsiders brawling rule. A wife's blood family may come to her defense, and no one else may interfere. Both villages intermarry too much to allow anything else, which meant that if I chose violence in this house, the entire second team would stand aside and spectate. Guo Bing knew it too. The bridge story had crossed the river days ago, which is exactly why the resident hooligan of the second team spent the whole visit smiling like a job applicant, while his mother retreated to eavesdrop from the inner room. so I kept my voice civil and made the civil version of a demand. Xiaozhuan's wearing a single layer in a Changbai winter, no cotton coat. I'm taking her to her sister's for a while. We'll have warm clothes made. Is that all right? With my eyes appending the fine print, say no, and I stop asking things politely. They tripped over each other agreeing. The only snag was the grandson. The old woman clamped down hard. My eldest grandson stays, and the very panic in her voice told me the boy, at least, gets fed and guarded like an asset. Fine, one extraction at a time. Outside, I took off my own cotton coat and layered it onto her sister via my wife. I'd lain in snowbanks for hours. As a hunter, level 2 chi keeps the furnace lit, and this beaten, quiet girl looked up at her brother-in-law for the first time in years and produced her entire first sentence to me. Brother-in-law, aren't you cold? Something in my chest bent sideways, and on that walk home I learned, through my wife, what the sisters never told me in my first life at all. These two girls had traveled thousands of kilometers to the northeast for their brother's sake, and Xiaozhuan had spent years quietly blaming herself for my old misery, wishing she could somehow have given her sister's family the son that would have fixed me. The girl starving in a coatless winter had been carrying my shame as her own. When we got her through my door, she tried to run into my arms, corrected course mid-step to her sisters, and cried the way people cry when they've been saving it up for years. Hard enough that my wife cried, hard enough that Jaja and Cece's little faces crumpled on standby, until Cece toddled up and wiped her aunt's tears with her small hand, and the whole room had to restart from the last checkpoint. My mother's reaction was the household equivalent of a mobilization order. One slam of her palm on the table. Su Hong and her son did what to my Xiaozhuan? And out came the arsenal I'd forgotten my mother owned. She is the eldest of the Zhang family. 5 younger brothers, each with 2 or 3 sons. The Zhang server as thick in the second team as Li in ours. After New Year, I'll go to my family and have the Zhang men tie that hooligan up and beat him properly. And if I meet Su Hong in the street, I'll slap her myself, or I'm not a Zhang. Then she stormed off to make Xiaozhuan a bowl of meat broth first, because her stomach might turn on rich food, since my mother's rage and my mother's caretaking run off the same fuel line. Meanwhile, I deployed my other rescue plan, a feast. Stir-fried pork intestines with soybeans, a recipe from 40 years in the future, wild ginger and dried chilies, white wine to clean the funk, soybean paste, an hour's simmer until the whole house smelled illegal, plus pork and vermicelli stew, the fathers and sons drinking, the nephews finally eating themselves spherical as promised, and the family competing to outplan each other on the subject of Xiaozhuan's in-laws until the girl was crying again, differently. That night, the Kang held the whole arithmetic of my new life. Sisters innermost, a baby tucked against each, 4 girls in the middle, me on the outer edge where the cold arrives first. Standard Northeast family formation. The man sleeps between his family and the door. And at breakfast, I said the word. The plan of record stuff first. Malted milk for Xiaozhuan every morning. Don't let anyone collect her while I'm away selling pork. Send for Dad if the in-laws show up. And then, flat as a weather report. I'll figure something out for you. Worst case, we divorce him. Both sisters froze mid-bite. Understand what that word weighed in 1978. Marry a chicken, follow the chicken. Marry a dog, follow the dog. You belonged to your husband's family down to your ghost. And no rural woman said divorce out loud, ever. They'd heard the word exists on the radio. I'd watched 10,000 divorces from the sofa of the future. To me, it's a tool, not a blasphemy. I walked it back gently. Just a thought, for now. You don't go back without our say-so, and left for the county. But behind me, in the doorway, watching our flashlights shrink into the dark, Xiaozhuan said quietly to her sister the sentence nobody in that century was supposed to say first. Sister, what if I listen to brother-in-law and divorce that heartless thing? I can work. I'll take care of you both for life. The tool was already in her hand. Good girl. The pork run, meanwhile, turned into a masterclass in how money moves when you're finally the man holding supply. 2.5 hours of sled hauling to the Forest Farm's little train, 2 packs of cigarettes to the station master for a hitch, and the cigarettes came back as a jackpot. The word wild boar sent the man sprinting off to fetch the deputy station master in charge of feeding the whole farm, who bought a 212 jin sow on the spot at a yuan a jin. 212 yuan earned before the train even left the platform, both of us performing the era's little kabuki where it's an exchange, not a sale, wink held firmly in place. And as he left, he leaned in with the future shopping list. Tiger bone, bear gallbladder, bring them to me, top price. Noted, boss. The mountain and I will discuss it. In the county, Ren Guang's crew mobilized like it was a heist, cart rented, tarpaulin over the meat because pork this conspicuous gets us donated to the supply and marketing cooperative, and I did the butchering outside their rooms like a surgeon, while Xiaobo got drafted into braised pork belly with potatoes for the crew. But the real scene was quieter. I'd caught it walking in, 4 grown men asleep at 10 in the morning, because winter dating couples only buy peanuts after the evening film, and peanut margins keep a wife and son alive, and nothing more. Ren Guang, the leader, the one who'd taught me a real man just does it, because nothing is harder than your family going hungry, sat drumming his fingers on the little table over my offer to sell him the whole load outright. 800 or 900 caddies, the biggest deal of his life, pressure visibly stacking on his shoulders, while the room went quiet and smoky around him. Then he patted the table once, softly, like a judge with a small gavel. Ming Fei, 95 cents a pound. How does that sound? And then my family got weird about it in the best possible way. My brother, my honest, illiterate, constitutional law brother, objected that the price was too high. Farmed fat pig sells for 1.2, wild boar can't match it. How do you make money at 95? Business is business. We can't live with you losing money for friendship's sake. I backed him. 90. Done. Ren Guang grinned and confessed the 95 had been him hedging his own nerves. He was confident wild boar would move at 1.2, even 1.25, because the magic words in 1978 aren't fresh or wild. They're no ration coupons needed. So the deal closed at 90, with both sides having haggled in the wrong direction. Try to imagine Li Bo's crew producing that negotiation. Bones and tendons, Nai. Bones and tendons. Over Xiaobo's braised pork belly, I also collected the intel I'd been fishing for. Yes, Li Bo and Guo Chuan had learned business from Ren Guang, meaning second uncle's counterpart had leaned on family ties until Ren Guang coughed up a few pointers he couldn't politely refuse to give. The crew's actual review of their new competitors, delivered by Lei Wu with a snort. They think everyone in the city gets rich because we did. Wait till they find out how deep this water is. If they're unlucky, jail. File that forecast next to Nai's 30 yuan of 2-cent notes. And one more file got opened at that table. Small Tiger was in love with a county girl, Mei Tian, pursued via my own drunken advice from a previous dinner. Once you've set your sights on her, persist, she'll get used to you. Executed with the subtlety of a mudslide, escorting her to work, escorting her from work, peanuts, movies, and his proudest weapon, retelling my hunting stories, which the girl apparently genuinely loved. I toasted his future as the dean's son-in-law and requested, when he made it, a job guarding the hospital gate. 1 man, 1 dog, single salary, dog included free. What none of us knew yet was how small this county actually is. The afternoon sales operation was a heist movie with meat. Target, the hospital staff residential building, 6 7-story blocks of doctors and teachers' families, government grain ration people, the closest thing 1978 has to a gated community of disposable income. Entry vector. The gatekeeper, one of those retired veterans the compounds post at the door, an old man who'd seen actual battlefields and missed them, whom Small Tiger had spent weeks befriending for courtship access, a sunk cost that just became commercial infrastructure. The old man clocked the whole play in one look. Visiting ME, are you? At this hour, when Xiaotian's at work, going the mother-in-law route now, you schemer. Accepted a pound of pork belly as tribute, issued one commandment, don't you gouge these people, no capitalist prices, and then appointed himself our security detail. Sell in peace. Nobody ruins your business while I'm at this gate. Retired veterans, the best business partner a pack of cigarettes ever bought. Then, the masterclass. We set up at the stone tables and sold nothing for 10 minutes to a courtyard of shut windows, and when I suggested hawking, Lei Wu shut me down. You don't shout in someone's compound, you wait. And I, the man from the future, shut up and took notes, because Reborn isn't the same as omniscient, and in 1978 street commerce these men held the PhDs. Right on schedule came the pivotal customer, one old auntie with a basket and 40 years of haggling muscle, who inspected every piece, talked down our opening price, threatened our scale with structural violence, cheat my scale and my husband breaks your beam, and paid exactly 4 yuan, computed by Xiaobo in his head, faster than I could set up the multiplication. I watched Ren Guang's lucky future crew run mental math like a calculator and revised, again, my theory of why they got rich. And then Lei Wu made the single best marketing spend of the decade, sliced her a free extra ounce. You're our first customer, auntie. Spread the word. And the woman went up those stairwells like a paid town crier, door to door. Meet in the courtyard, no coupons. 20 minutes later, the compound emptied downstairs, and we were running a 3-man assembly line. Lei Wu selling, Xiaobo cashiering, me cutting and tying rope handles for people who hadn't brought bags. I had to sprint back for 2 more basket loads. The mountain and rivers proverb held. No tide moves like a tide of people. The only casualty of the day was Small Tiger's cardiovascular system. because when the after-work crowd drifted in, his goddess walked through the gate and made straight for our stall with her scarf down and the first real smile Small Tiger had ever seen her produce, aimed past him, at me. "Li Kai, it's you! Why are you selling meat here?" And the county collapsed to the size of a teacup. Small Tiger's métier was Wu Xiaoyun, the saleswoman from the Chinese medicine pharmacy who'd bought my badger oil. Father, hospital director. Mother, head of obstetrics. Residence, 3rd floor, left building. That is, inside the very fortress Small Tiger had spent weeks bribing his way into. The poor boy ran all 5 stages of grief at a meat stall, shoving pig's trotters at her. Collagen métier, skin-like, getting corrected on nutritional science, trying to gift her the ribs for free, and receiving the flattest, "I don't want it if it's free," in Northeast history, until I steered it into the shallows, called it my thanks for the badger oil deals, priced at exactly 0 awkwardness, and went back to cutting meat with my head down until she left, at which point I looked up into Small Tiger staring at me like a wronged spirit. "Brother Kai, you have a wife and a daughter, 6 daughters. You can't steal her from me." "Brother, I sold badger oil twice. I didn't remember her name." Upstairs, meanwhile, I'd learned the shape of it later. Wu Xiaoyun was cheerfully raiding her mother's grocery money to buy more of that amazing hunter's wild boar, while her mother squinted at the wrong suspect entirely, wondering whether her daughter had fallen for the little peanut vendor who walks her to work. This county is a soap opera running on one set. Day's ledger counted at the table that night. Our stall moved over 300 jin. Renguang's black market team, 200. 782 yuan stacked in front of my brother and me, correct twice. Renguang then tried to pay for my guest house room on the logic that I'd worked the afternoon for him, got his money pushed back, deployed the unanswerable, "Are you being distant with me?" and won 5 yuan, because in this crew, generosity is a fight you lose with honor. Then I repeated the gatekeeper's assessment of Small Tiger's romantic technique to the full table, verbatim, and the boy got roasted from 4 directions at once until even he was laughing. Somewhere out there, Li Wei was counting 99's 2-cent notes and dreaming of this city's easy money. "Brother, the water's deep, and the men who swim in it are better than you in ways you don't even own the instruments to measure." In the guest house that night, heating pipes, hot foot soak, luxury by our standards, my brother dropped his recon from the black market. A second-hand rifle on offer, 480 yuan, with 20 bullets. My ruling as the family armorer: buy it, and buy extra bullets. Sharpshooters are made by feeding them ammunition. We don't economize on the things that keep us alive. And I had my own shopping list: a watch. A hunter who reads the time off the sky through a forest canopy is a hunter guessing. The county black market at dawn was the commune's scruffy cousin gone to finishing school. An actual shed, wind-proofed, 10-cent entry fee for sellers. A cathedral hush where deals traveled by whisper. I swept the domestic list first. 3 cans of malted milk, 1 for mother, 2 for the skin and bones patient at home, vanishing cream, dad's tobacco, then found the watchman in the corner and got quoted 160 for a Shanghai that ran 90-something with a coupon at the co-op. I stood up to leave on principle. He caught my shoulder and flipped his whole card. The calendar model, 116 list, permanently out of stock, date window and all. I checked it, paid the 160, and wore it out of the shed, first watch of this lifetime, strapped over a hunter's pulse. Meanwhile, Renguang personally chaperoned my brother's gun purchase and squeezed the seller until the Type 56 came with 30 bonus bullets and a bottle of gun oil. 2 rifles in the family now. My brother carried his out of that shed the way other men carry newborns. Homecoming, 11 p.m., snow still falling, and the door opened before I finished knocking because Xiao Zhuan had been listening for me. "Brother-in-law, you're back. Come in quickly." Brushing snow off my coat, pressing hot water into my hands, 3 days of safety already unhunching her shoulders. Then the gift ceremony. Malted milk for the whole household, a cup a day, all of you, that's an order. Vanishing cream for Xiao Zhuan, and the centerpiece, a full set of padded cotton clothes, cotton shoes, and a hat. I'd squeezed the coat at the co-op myself to check the fill, because my brother had put it plainly on the ride home. No winter coat means she was under house arrest until spring. Families like that don't keep a woman alive many years. Xiao Zhuan went in to change and came out in bright festival red, and Cece delivered the review that mattered. "Auntie is so pretty," and there she was, suddenly, under the numbness, the lively girl from before, re-rendered. I smacked my forehead about the forgotten scarf. She waved it off, laughing, and I handed my wife the remaining 600 for the iron box, minus 1 watch, which she inspected, praised, and strapped back onto my wrist herself with the household's new fiscal doctrine. We don't skimp on what goes into the mountains with you. At my parents' place, the comedy had beaten me there. My brother was already showing the rifle to dad the way he'd shown his wife, his kids, and presumably several trees along the route. I put the tobacco on the table and discovered my brother had also bought Dad tobacco, the old man wheezing with laughter at his son's synchronized filial bribery. Looks like I won't run short this winter, and my mother scolding me for wasting money on malted milk for her old bones, while already planning to feed it to her granddaughters. Then the War Council. Tomorrow we hunt bear. Hibernation season. Maximum fat. Maximum value. My father's face went stern in the old way, and out came the veteran's kit. Take the firecrackers, a box of them, from mother's hands. When you're digging out a den, noise is a weapon. Some technology needs no upgrade. We marched at dawn, and so, in the opposite direction, did the competition. Li Bo, Guo Chuan, and crew rolled into the county that same morning, 30 yuan ahead, leaning on Ren Guang to find them housing, planning to flip black market goods at the train station, all five supremely confident that enduring hardship and being quick-witted was the entire recipe. 2 expeditions left home that day. Keep both receipts. Ours opened with a day of unglamorous truth, firewood. Hours of felling and splitting until the Tungzi house had a winter's stack in the corner. Enough that Hei Dian got promoted to indoor employee whenever we're in residence. When we're not, she sleeps at her own den. A leopard seen lounging at a hunter's hut by other hunters is a pelt, not a pet. Evening, pheasant and rabbit stew with the soy sauce my wife had packed. 1 cup of my brother's wine each. 1, because nobody gets drunk in the mountains. And the specific happiness of firelight in a warm box you built yourself while the world outside goes white. At 4:30 a.m., my brother woke me up vibrating, new gun syndrome, identical to new car syndrome, so we went. His marksmanship tutorial cost 8 bullets and 1 unrecognizable rabbit, headshot instructions pending. And then the mountain paid out the classic Northeast tuition, roe deer, the animal so famously silly the old-timers swear it used to deliver itself to villages in winter. 2 big ones and a little one came hopping toward us. We took a tree each, you left, me right. 1 shot only, then hold fire, the dog's work. And his second ever shot with that rifle put a roe deer down while mine took the other through the head. Hei Dian ran down the wounded one inside 50 meters. 3 deer, intestines on a branch for the mountain god. My older brother hung them himself this time, unprompted. He was learning the whole religion, not just the trigger. The bear search itself was the mountain reminding us who runs the server. A day of streamside logic, bear's den near water, breath frost marks the entrance, that produced 1 false alarm and an empty hollow. An evening of my brother heretically requesting cabbage because endless meat was too greasy. Say that in the village and they'll beat you, I told him, and he conceded the point while planning to smuggle in salted cabbage anyway. And me quietly hitting the wall on the pendant's spiritual mileage. Level 3 of the Beast Taming Art was going to take many more recharges. Then, day 3. First, a snow-buried little sika deer that Hei Dian dug out like a truffle, killed, cached, marked, and 2 hours later, under a big ridge tree, my eye snagged on the thing my father had described 100 times. Snow that didn't match. A patch of frost breathing itself onto the drift from below. Hand signal. Silence. My brother dug a bowl-sized hole with the shovel, gram by gram, while I stood over him with the rifle already shouldered, and then he looked inside, went pale in real time, gently packed the snow back like a man rewrapping a live bomb, and walked to me with his voice shaking. Ming Fei, it's a brown bear, a large brown bear, grown male, 1,000 pounds if it's an ounce. And there it was, the exact animal my father turned around and walked away from every single time. The raid boss, where anything short of a headshot is your obituary, where even a lick takes half your face. My brother looked at me with the question. And I stood there, weighing 1,000 pounds of sleeping death against the golden gallbladder, the paws, the winter prime fat, the small fortune wearing fur at the bottom of that hole, and against a promise I'd made to 6 daughters about their father always walking out of these mountains. Do it, or walk away. The frost kept breathing. The math decided it. Alone, even with the whole animal squad, I'd have walked. 1 man versus 1,000-pound brown bear is a genre of story where the narrator changes at the end. But 2 men, 2 Type 56s, coordinated, 1 clean skull shot, and any bear dies. We do it, I said, but you obey my commands. And then my honest brother mounted his 1 rebellion of the winter. He refused the safe position. No, you take the high ground. Your marksmanship's better. And the man at the entrance faces the bear. I'm the older brother. I had to invoke Dad's law. In the mountains, you listen to Ming Fei, or we walk away right now, to force him up onto the den roof where he belonged. Understand what he was volunteering for. This man who 3 weeks ago had never fired a gun. The mouth of a brown bear's front door. The technique is my father's, handed down like scripture. Firecrackers. Hunters swear an angry bear yields the iron-grade gallbladder. No idea if the science holds, but you do not edit scripture mid-ritual. So, animal squad in ambush above the den, brother prone on the roof, me square in front of the entrance, gloves off, cigarette lit and puffed hot to guarantee the fuse, half a string of crackers in my hand, my heartbeat suddenly very loud in a very quiet forest. Light, throw, rifle up. The string went off inside the den like a war in a barrel, and the roar that answered came up through the ground into my boot soles. Then the snow ceiling burst, one paw, then a head the size of a stove, eyes already blood red, close enough that I could smell the rot fish stench of its mouth, and two rifles spoke almost as one sound, mine through the mouth, his through the crown. The roar cut off like a pulled plug. 1,000 pounds of bear died half in, half out of its own doorway. I sat down flat in the snow with my heart slamming. Even a level 2 cultivator's nerves have a rated load, and a brown bear at spitting distance exceeds it, while my brother, who'd had the luxury of the roof, hopped down fresh as a postman. Ming Fei, we did it. We killed a large brown bear. Note for the record, the meek, honest one shot cleaner than I did. Facing it makes the difference. Respect the roof. Then, priorities. The gallbladder, now. Belly open, careful blade, and out came the jackpot inside the jackpot. A golden gallbladder, amber all the way through, near transparent held up to the light, the kind that doesn't cost less than 1,000 yuan, and that eye medicine buyers speak of like a holy relic, into the bag like a crown jewel. Then the industrial phase, the prized right forepaw, the honey-stealing paw, ask any buyer, the hide, the head, the winter fat destined to become bear oil for the whole family, and the hind paw reserved, per a certain grumpy old man's standing order, for eating. Dad's bear paw was coming home. The pendant took its richest meal yet in the blood pit, a predator's blood, and I could feel the difference. 3 more like this, and the art breaks into level 3, and the two of us sat in the stinking, wind-sheltered mouth of the den, eating flatbread like kings in a slaughterhouse, while my brother said the quiet part. Dad hunted his whole life and never took a brown bear. It's his one regret. This and a tiger. Wait till he sees. Sons, 40 years old between us, and still grinding for the old man's approval bar. Getting a bear off a mountain is its own war. We hauled to the Tangzi house by dark, and next morning, with 2 cached roe deer added, the sled simply exceeded us. I had to send my brother ahead to draft on Fu and Wei, with a sika deer leg for my wife to stew as the helper's fee, while I sat cross-legged against a tree cultivating off the pendant with a leopard on guard. 4 men hauled us home by flashlight, into the now standard scene, tarp lifted, gasps. But tonight the roe deer and sika might as well have been garnish. Everyone stared at the bear. My wife and sister-in-law orbited their husbands, checking for holes before they let themselves breathe. My father took one look at the golden gallbladder, pupils dilating, and left. Walked straight home with it like a man carrying nitroglycerin. This can't be handled carelessly, because gallbladder curing is the old guard's art, and the price rides on the cure. And over drinks, Wei, sensing destiny, begged to be taught hunting, and got flattened by his own father mid-sentence. You think just anyone climbs that mountain, and you'd take your brother? If you both die, who buries me? Even An Fu sided against him. The mountain's admissions office is family, and family said no. One more thing surfaced at that table. Between rounds, the men could all feel the political weather turning. I sat on what I knew, that next spring the household responsibility system arrives, land divided to the members, the whole world about to tilt toward everything I'm building, and steered the talk to school instead, telling An Fu to enroll his kids. Some cards you play, some you just hold and smile. And one piece of housekeeping before the next trip. I told my wife to send venison to the 2 educated youths at their lonely outpost. Preschool diplomacy, young Lichin's larder, and discovered my fearless wife had a soft spot after all. She postponed it, wanting me along, because facing intellectuals about her daughter's schooling scared her more than facing her sister's in-laws. Countryside reverence for the educated runs bone deep. We'd go together. County run number 2 was the victory lap with complications. At Ren Guang's, the tarp came off and Small Tiger yelped, "A bear!" loud enough to run an ad campaign. The crew halted back like smugglers, and I ran the butcher's table in the courtyard while Ren Guang weighed and recorded every cut. Clean books, always. And this time the audience was the complication. Guo Chuan's whole crew drifted out, cigarettes offered around, and my brother, no match for a smiling accountant's son, cheerfully explained everything. So Li Bo got to stand in that courtyard and watch his despised heirless cousin unload a bear and 2 roe deer as Ren Guang's supplier, then slunk back to his room to lie down alone with his self-esteem. I'd have savored it more if I'd known what he was marinating in there, because the intel I picked up over lunch explained Ren Guang's missing smile. My cousin's crew had already gone full parasite. Ren Guang had housed them out of respect for Guo Chuan's father, and within 2 days, Li Bo shadowed the crew, mapped their peanut supply and movie theater pitch, and on day 3, Guo Chuan's gang set up in direct competition at the same theater door. Wolf Meat House. Lei Wu and Small Tiger were drafting the falling out speech that same night. Ren Guang sat there eating shame. My fault. I let them in, while I mentally filed the cleanest character reference I'll ever get. This is why these men stay mediocre for 40 years. Give them a ladder and they'll steal the rungs. And in the room across the courtyard, right on schedule, Li Wei was upgrading his ambitions. He'd eavesdropped enough to grasp my consignment arrangement and was now pitching it to the crew as the real prize. Selling their game is business with no capital. Better than no capital. With Guo Min helpfully suggesting Nai Nai and Third Uncle be deployed to smooth things over with my family, so the boys could take half my catch to sell. Li Wei knew exactly how much I despised him, knew it was fantasy, and promised to think of a way anyway. Because saving face in front of your minions is also a full-time job. Keep marinating, cousin. I'll check on you at New Year. The last stop rewrote my price list. Wang Yong's restaurant, siesta hour. I offered him a bear leg and some meat as relationship maintenance, and the man came off his bed, gripping my arm. The paw and the gallbladder, sell them to me, any price, name it, I won't haggle. Now, no merchant alive says I won't haggle unless the thing he's buying isn't the thing he's buying. I didn't know yet what I'd learned soon enough. Wang Yong had spent years quietly stacking black market money toward his real dream, a proper high-end restaurant in the county, and the township head had finally introduced him to a powerful county leader who could open that door. And when a man like that suddenly needs a golden gallbladder and a prime bear paw in winter, he isn't stocking his kitchen. He's wrapping a gift. Somewhere above my mountain, a door I couldn't see yet had just cracked open, and my bear was about to become somebody's key. The story spilled out of him, a county leader whose mother's eyes were failing, a hinted request for bear gallbladder, and Wang Yong's whole restaurant dream hanging on delivering it, which put me in the seller's chair of the century, and I spent the leverage on the only thing I actually wanted. You can have both, and I won't gouge you. One condition: when your county restaurant opens, a job for my wife's little sister. He didn't blink. If she's capable, I'll train her into management. And there it was, Zhaozhuan's whole exit route, built in one sentence. A wage, a room in the county, a life that never depends on a hooligan's household again. 1,000 yuan for the gallbladder and both front paws, hands shaken, and my brother spent the walkout scandalized that I'd charged a friend so much, until I told him what that golden gallbladder trades for in 10 years. Tens of thousands. You're dreaming. Sure, brother, set your watch by my dreams. Then the errand that turned into a manhunt. My wife and I carried venison to the Educated Youth Point, that big, emptied compound where 40 city kids once lived, and now just 2 women hold the walls. And the door was answered by the other teacher, Su Lei, tall, short-haired, soldier straight, and holding a kitchen knife, which she lowered only when she heard a woman's voice. Inside, over hot water, the reason surfaced. Someone had been creeping to their window at night for half a year. They'd nailed the frames shut, pushed a cabinet against the door, slept with scissors under the pillow, and the captain's previous stakeout had failed because his young militiamen smoked on post and lit themselves up like a shop sign. My wife closed the deal on going to the captain immediately with her own story, one I'd half buried from my first life. The bachelor who harassed her back when her husband was the village joke, and how only a full clan showing up had ended it. These people get bolder until someone stops them, then they climb through the window. So all 4 of us marched to Uncle Wen, who slammed the table, delegated with relief. Ming Fei, you 2 are dressed for lying in snow anyway, and issued the rules of engagement. Catch him, beat him, just don't cripple him. So the brothers Li went hunting one more time, for the worst game in the forest. Our mountain whites vanished into the drifts 100 meters behind the women's room. Within an hour, we were 2 pairs of eyes in a snowbank, and when the figure finally came slinking through the dark, circling wide, checking sightlines, then pressing his face to the one badly sealed gap in the window, I let him fully commit before I came up out of the snow like the season's last bear. My shout alone knocked him off the windowsill. One kick pinned him to the wall, and the flashlight confirmed what his silhouette had already whispered. Wang the greedy, the thief, the leopard mob organizer. The man who'd promised the village would never have a peaceful day. I finally had him in the one arrangement where every rule was on my side, and I paid out 6 weeks of interest through my fists, scientifically, arms and thighs and backside only, until he was offering to call me grandpa. Su Lei got her turn too, stomping his back, yelling, "You like to look? Look, look, look," until gentle young Li Qin pulled her off, worried they'd owe a life for him. The village court convened in the snow. Captain, accountant, militia commander, unanimous verdict, hand him to the commune government. A year or 2 locked up under current law, and lucky for it. A few years later, the big crackdown would have buried him. They half-dragged him to the storage room, and the last I saw of him on the road next morning, he shot me a look of pure venom over his escort's shoulder. "If I come back, your whole family suffers," written all over it, and I offered, conversationally, to break his legs on the spot. The accountant's only objection was logistical. Break an arm instead, we still need him to walk to the commune. I love this village. And listen to what the accountant, Guo Shizhong, a man whose face gives away nothing, told his own militiamen as we hauled off toward the commune with the bear meat. Don't envy money that's earned with a life. And tell every Guo in this village, do not provoke that man. When the coldest bookkeeper in Kaoshan starts issuing standing orders about you, your stock has officially changed exchanges. The money kept compounding almost as an afterthought now. Wang Yong took 82 jin of bear meat at a generous $1.50, 1,123 yuan, counted out in a brick of 10 yuan notes, then held us hostage for lunch, cracked 2 bottles of good Beidakong, and let me buy 50 caddies of rice at his cost, split across 3 households and 1 mountain hut. Over that lunch, I did something I hadn't planned, asked him honestly about the restaurant business. Not for me, I've retired from empires, but because a thought had opened like a door. My too thin sister and her too honest husband, running a small eatery someday instead of grinding themselves into the dirt. And my brother, whose rifle becomes contraband when the gun bans hit in the 90s, needing a landing spot whose date I already know. A man who's read the ending owes his family more than meat. He owes them exits. Ren Guang's crew came back and settled like clockwork. Bear meat sold at 1.56, our cut at 1.2 as agreed, 564 yuan, plus 70 for my dried mushrooms and howling grass, pelts bundled off for the next run, and the celebration dinner delivered the episode's best intel and best comedy. Intel. I nudged them toward renting an actual storefront, and Ren Guang's refusal was smarter than my suggestion. We don't understand the policy wins yet, 2 more years, which from a man without my newspaper subscription is exactly the right read. Comedy, the blind date farce. Small Tiger, despairing of Wu Xiaoyun, had been booked by his mother onto a matchmaking visit to the same girl on the same day as Xiao Bo, booked by his mother. The table erupted. My father settled it from the head chair with patriarch's wisdom. Normal! A family with a good daughter compares candidates. When I courted your mother, there were 4 young men. We all relied on ability, and then made the fatal error of elaborating. Because the true story, extracted at volume by my mother from the kitchen doorway, is this. Great-grandfather courted her family by smearing oil on his lips to look like a man who ate meat daily, staging baskets of borrowed rice in the outer room, and marrying her off for 20 caddies of it, all of which was returned to its actual owners within a fortnight under cover of a fake burglary. My mother married a special effects budget. That's not deception, that's strategy. My father protested, to a room already on the floor, and I leaned over to Small Tiger. Hear that? Strategy. For the record, the next night Xiao Bo won the blind date bracket outright, and I gave the heartbroken Small Tiger the only advice that matters. The girls keep refusing you because you rank them, city goddess, country consolation prize, and they can tell. Fix the mindset and the rest follows. He'll get there. He's got a good gatekeeper coaching him. Which left one final vulture to shoo off the carcass of my success. Third uncle came calling with an unprecedented dinner invitation, and I made him skip to the point on my father's Kang. The point, rehearsed at home by Li Bo and Qing Aiyi, was a masterpiece of the genre. Be careful, Ming Fei. Ren Guang's crew might be cheating you on weights. Better to split your game between them and Li Bo's crew for healthy competition. My father didn't even look up from his nuts. Ming Fei, it even look up from his nuts. Ming Fei is this family's pillar now. I'm a lame old man with a cigarette and a meal. Talk to him. So I laid Li Bo's county career out flat. How Ren Guang housed them, guaranteed their rent, and how Li Bo shadowed his benefactor's crew for 2 days and set up in direct competition on day 3. The farmer and the snake, live from the county. My father's head came up like a gun turret. Is that true? He's blackening the old Li name. And third uncle deflated into, I'll ask Li Bo when he's back. I left him with the household's final trade ruling and no appeal window. I will never hand my game to that ingrate. Heaven watches what people do, uncle. Even in winter, and my father, closing the door on his brother, still sent Nai an invitation to come eat bear meat, because that's the difference between us and them, and he knows it, and I've stopped minding. That evening I stood in my yard in the blue snow light, feeding raw meat to 2 leopard cubs who need to stay wild, watching the lamplit window where my wife, her rescued sister, and 6 daughters were making noise over dinner. 3 months ago, 1 lifetime and 1 funeral ago, I died in a hospital corridor as a billionaire whose own children waited outside the door for the good news. My father's last winters had been silence. My brother's kids couldn't read. Xiaojuan was already lost, and the man I used to be slept through all of it on a broken Kang. Now, over 4,000 yuan in an iron box, rice in the pot, 2 rifles and a leopard on the payroll, a mother sharpening herself for war on Xiaojuan's in-laws, a father guarding trade secrets and scheduling revenges, teachers who know my daughter's names guarding a school that opens in spring, and a family that counts me home through the window before they'll let themselves sleep. The heirless man, they called me. Look at this yard. I'm the richest heir this family ever had, because this time, I'm the inheritance, and spring is coming. The land splits among the members next year. I've read tomorrow's paper. Remember, the school bell rings for Xiaohua and Jingjing. Xiaojuan's divorce war is waiting on the thaw. Li Boy's county adventure has a bill coming due. And somewhere out past the Tongzi house, my father's one unfinished sentence is still walking around on 4 paws. A tiger. The mountain and I aren't done with each other. First pig, second bear. Ask me in spring about the third.